Of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Mark Howard today, Ryan Porth as well here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe is out today. He'll be back tomorrow, traveling back from Florida today, so he'll be back with us tomorrow here on the show. But I'm excited because that means I get to do my first show with the legendary Mark Howard. Mark, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
Good, Robbie. I hanging with the sunblock. How bad is it?
It's gotten pretty bad, my friend. Let me tell you. Like yesterday, people were looking at the live stream, and the nose was a little red. I will say it's gotten it's been significantly worse yesterday. I stayed out really all day in the sun yesterday, and that was probably not a wise decision.
Well, as we get older, we learn the sun is not our friend.
That is true. I'm learning that firsthand this week. And Predators fans, I think, may be legitimately upset with me today because a lot of them have pointed to the fact that they're 2-0 while I'm at the beach. I'm returning home from the beach today. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there that the playoff jinx may become a thing today. I know. People just want me to stay on the side of the road. We'll see what happens on that front. So it's good to have you with us today, Mark. Excited to get your thoughts on the Predators as we move forward here. Got a lot to get to today here on the show as well. Some Julio Jones news. That was pretty interesting yesterday regarding him and Shannon Sharpe as well that we'll get to coming up a little bit later in the show as well. Mark, I want to start just with your thoughts on Game 3 and Game 4 for the Predators. They're down 0-2 coming back home to Bridgestone Arena. Their backs are against the wall. Obviously, it took some extra time in both games. What did you think of the response by the Predators in Games 3 and 4?
Well, I think collectively there are a lot of different ways you can look at this. And I just want to say that after Games 3 and 4, not only that the Preds won them the way they won them, the atmosphere that was in Bridgestone Arena, I got to feel like that in the inner sanctum, Preds ownership, I just think they've got to feel like that this justifies not selling at the trade deadline. I think getting this out of this group, even if they don't win the series, I think to them sort of justifies the tack that they took. And this is by no means that they're playing with house money right now, but I do think that had the series gone 5 games, I think we would have looked at the collective wisdom of what they did and really second-guessed them. And many of us have second-guessed them to begin with. But I think, first of all, that justifies what David Poile decided to do. Games 3 and 4 were kind of different, but yet similar. I thought the Preds outplayed Carolina in Game 3. I thought in Game 4 the stats were ridiculously tilted towards Carolina, but the longer the game went on, the better the Preds were. And I thought by the end, obviously, they won the game, but they were the ones, that made the big play. I think that Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson are back in the good graces of the fan base if they weren't before. I think the Luke Cunnin trade looks pretty good right now, no matter how good Nick Bonino is for Minnesota. So I think this series has made a lot of what David Poile did in the offseason look better than it ever has. But as far as the team is concerned, I think you really got to be impressed with John Hines. He did not take the easy road. He took Johansson and Duchene off the power play. That seemed to actually help them individually as players. The power play, obviously still not great, got a little bit better. But Hines' decisions, and I just think the way he has managed this team in this series, I think he's outcoached Rod Brind'Amour, who's an excellent coach, a guy who's going to win the Jack Adams Award. I think Brind'Amour whining to the media had a negative effect on his team. You're not going to convince me otherwise. But I still think the Preds have sort of developed this toughness that statistically they might be losing big in the game, but they're not getting, they stay close. Carolina can't shake them. And every time it seems like Carolina gets an advantage on them or gets ahead by a goal, the Predators find an answer. And once you go to overtime, anything can happen. and there just seems to be a magic with the Predators, and especially Bridgestone Arena in the postseason once they get past regulation. And we saw, 2 more magic moments.
Yeah, and Mark, I'm glad you brought up the toughness there, because I was talking about this yesterday. I came away from games 3 and 4 thinking Carolina's still the better team. And I think to your point, in game 4, they put that on display for the majority of that game. And as you said, the Predators got better as that game went along. But I also think every time the Predators, in years past, when things started to go poorly against them, I'm not going to say they just absolutely folded up like a tent, but there was not a very high response level in terms of executing, digging your way out of tough situations. And John Hines talked about that the moment he got here, about building that mental toughness and building that resolve where things are not always going to go your way. Things are not always going to be perfect, but you got to find a way to dig yourself out of it. And I thought that's what the Predators did in games 3 and 4, especially in game 4. Like every time you thought like the game was about to get away from the Predators, they found a way to dig deep and respond with a big goal or a big hit or a big defensive player saved by UC Saros. And that's impressive to me. Is that going to be enough to finish the job off here and win this series starting tonight in game 5? I don't know. I would still say the odds are probably in favor of the Hurricanes to get that done. But I was really impressed with the mental toughness that was put on display and some of the intangible things that you can't really measure on the stat sheet. That's what David Poile and John Hines have been trying to build with this group, and it looks like they've accomplished that.
And one thing we haven't seen really since 2017, when they made the great run to the final, and that is overachieving. We have not seen the Predators do that in a long time. We've seen the Predators underachieve. We've seen them disappoint. We've seen them come in below expectation. But suddenly that has not been the case in this postseason. And again, even if they lose the series, I think we've seen what Hines has been able to do. And also in-series coaching in terms of shuffling his lines, changing things up a little bit, sitting Fabro, playing Carrier, and just some of the other little wrinkles that they've been able, to figure out, on the counterattack, being able, to make some plays after making some adjustments. That's just really good coaching. And that's what you love to see if the guy is on your side. And that's what they're getting right now from John Hines and his staff.
And, you do both of these games without Victor Arvidsson in the lineup day-to-day with an upper body injury. I have no clue what his status is going to be for tonight. But, Mark, I would have to think at this point, based on what I've seen out of Arvidsson and, in my opinion, the lack of speed burst that has been there for a while now, even if he's ready and he's able to play in tonight's game in game 5 for the Predators against Carolina, I don't really see a spot for Victor Arvidsson at this point. If Tolvanen's going to be in there, if Duchesne's going to be up on that top line with Johansson and Forsberg, I'm not sure there's a spot in the lineup right now for Victor Arvidsson, especially with the way Nick Cousins came in and played in games 3 and 4 as well.
No, I would agree with that. Maybe the third line, but But the other thing too is, you're exactly right, and you don't want to say that RV is a diminished player right now, but it would be coaching malpractice to put him back. With Forsberg and Johansson, Duchesne has been seamlessly fitting in for them on the first line. And then, you go back to the first game and how bad the Granderson, Cunnin line was, not even a shot generated. And then, what a difference maker, they were the last 2 games, and especially game 4.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a huge response by that Grandin line. Cunnin with 2 goals in game 4 as well. And just really impressive by the Predators to get this thing up and get this thing tied up in the best of 7 series. And now the question becomes, can they get it done tonight in game 5? And Mark, you've seen this story as many times as I have here with the Predators. This is not the first time that they've battled back from down 0-2 to tie a series up at 2. And it has not gone well for them in game 5 after they've been able to do this. I'm interested to see if this story can start to change, if that can be any different for the Predators starting tonight in Game 5.
Yeah, I don't buy into that because, most of the guys on this team, haven't played. This is their first Game 5 with the Predators. I want to say something to Robby. That Roman Josi did not play well the first 2 games, and he has turned it around as well. But it was interesting to me how Hines was not afraid to reshuffle his first 2 deep pairings. He changed his third deep pairing after the first game, but a lot of times, you never saw Laviolette, and the personnel was different, admittedly, but still, it's pretty gutsy, in my opinion, to do what Hines has done with the first 2 deep pairings, and it seems to have worked out for him.
Think about the Game 1 lineup versus what he's going to take into Game 5.
I know.
Like the adjustments that he's made. You mentioned Laviolette. I feel like Laviolette probably would have been a little bit more hard-headed and tried to make his initial thought work instead of adjusting on the fly as much as Hines has.
Yep.
No, I totally agree, and I think John Hines deserves a lot of credit for that. By the way, Ryan Porth, what did we do to deserve this 8:30 start time coming up in Game 6? It's really 8:45. What have we done to deserve this? I thought we were getting rid of that here in the NHL.
I mean, my God. I mean, they're in the Southeast Division, basically, with Tampa, Carolina, and Florida in the playoffs, and you're going to make it an 8:30 start on Thursday? I mean,
is really
come on.
8:45, which is 9:30 for Carolina. That'll be fun.
And 9:45. I mean, how is the NHL helping the Carolina fans there? Like, it's 8:45 for us, but it's 9:45 for the little Caniacs out there in Raleigh. Like, any kids that want to watch their team, in a Game 6, they're going to be tucked away and, gone to bed before puck drops. I mean, that's just so ridiculous.
God help us if that game goes into overtime. And I'm speaking purely off of selfish reasons right now, Mark. I don't want to see overtime in Game 6.
Robby, let me tell you, my friend, having to be on television and then having to think about if you were going to get any sleep at all to do morning radio if the game went into 2 or 3 overtimes, I feel your pain.
Well, you, Mark, would have been doing the morning show after the Mike Fisher triple overtime game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you ever sleep that night? Or did you just pull an all-nighter?
I think maybe, really I didn't. You're sort of running on adrenaline. But that was fun.
Yeah.
Had they lost the game in triple overtime, it would have sucked.
Sure.
Yes, it would have.
But it's a lot more fun. People want to listen to you, and people sort of, vicariously live through you a little bit with the experience of watching that game and then going to work the next day. Not too bad.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens coming up in Game 6 on Thursday and whether or not we survive
Cowboy up.
all-night affair at Bridgestone Arena. Cowboy up, that's for sure. When we come back, we are off and running here today on Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. UC Saros has been awesome in this series so far. How much belief do we have that he can steal this thing as we move forward here? We'll get into that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Looking ahead to Game 5 between the Predators and the Hurricanes tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And Mark, one of the biggest stories coming out of Games 3 and 4 is UC Saros and the way that he has continued to play for this Predators team heading into the playoffs. 110 saves in his last 2 games on 117 shots. He has been awesome. He has made the difficult saves. He has made the easy saves, and he has made some difficult saves look pretty easy in the time in between that. Number one, what have been your thoughts on Saros so far in this series? Because look, he closed out the regular season strong. He was the best goalie in the NHL for the last 2 months of the regular season. But we all know playoff hockey is a different animal, and this is the first legitimate 7-game playoff series that he's been in where he's been the guy. How do you respond to that type of pressure? I think it's pretty clear thus far he's responded pretty well.
I think we all agreed going in that the hole in Saros' resume was a good postseason, and could he either steal a series or stand out in a series? And we're getting the answer in spades. He's been the man. There's no question who the best Predator has been, and it's not a shock because of the way we saw him play. And you got Preds fans already talking about Askarov, who had a great year in the KHL, 1.21 goals against average, and I think like 7 or 9 games or whatever. But they're already talking about him, and he's not going to be here for a while. I just want to tell you. But whatever the case, Saros has definitely stepped it up, and he's been a guy. And the great thing about a series like this is that Saros is now living rent free in the heads of the Carolina players. It's not like he's been invincible because they have scored on him, but in the 2 overtime games, he was just unbelievable in the OTs, and that's what you need because you can't make a mistake in the overtime. You can make 75 saves, but if you let one in, it doesn't really matter. So he has been clutch. He has risen to the occasion, and the times when the Predators were getting demonstrably outplayed, he's been the great equalizer. And when that happens, that can frustrate you. And I know for Carolina, I think they felt like, especially in Game 3, they had their chances with Saros. I'm sorry, Game 4. I think they felt like they had their chances with Saros, and they couldn't put the Preds away. They had 2 one-goal leads, but couldn't finish the deal. So if you're the Predators, you're feeling very good about your goaltending headed, as they reconvene in Raleigh tonight.
Yeah, he's been awesome, and I think, Mark, as I look ahead to Game 5 here, look, I don't know exactly how the game's going to play out, obviously. I do think the Predators have figured some things out in terms of their lineup, and we'll see, how does that stand up against the test of not having last change? You're going back on the road. You're going into a raucous environment in PNC Arena in Raleigh, so we know that heading into this game. I would expect Carolina, especially to begin that game, to come out, and they're going to give their best shot to the Predators. I think we saw that to a certain degree in Game 4 as well. Can UC Saros keep it up? That's my biggest question as we move forward here is, like I said, I think in Games 3 and 4, I still came away from those 2 games thinking that Carolina is the better team. They dominated in Game 4 in terms of zone time and offensive chances and all the stats that you threw out there earlier as well. But UC Saros has been the great equalizer. Can he keep that up? Can he keep up this heavy workload that he's had as well in the last couple of games? For the Predators, obviously, you don't want to see every game go to overtime at this point and have him making 60 saves tonight. That's a lot to ask from your goaltender. But can he keep this up? Because I do think tonight in Game 5, you're going to see a pretty determined Carolina Hurricanes team tonight right from the jump.
Yeah, I think if you're Carolina, really if you're Rod Brind'Amour, you look at Game 4, and what do you really change? The numbers they put out were awesome. Statistically, they outplayed the Predators by 1.5 miles. But as we always say, there's only one stat that counts, and that's the scoreboard. But the other thing with them is that they really haven't had the Predators chasing them, since the first two games, where they've gotten out ahead, and they've been able, to really, bother the Predators with their pressure. And I'm sure they're feeling like, the Predators have managed not to fall behind in games 3 and 4 by anything more than a goal. If the Preds get down by 2 goals to Carolina, in my opinion, that really puts them behind the 8 ball. It's not insurmountable, but it changes the dynamic. And I think that's been one of the keys for the Preds is that they've stayed close. And you stay close, it gets late, you take it into overtime. As we know, it only takes one.
Well, and in the last couple of games, whenever Carolina took a lead, it was quick.
Yes.
That Nashville was able to tie the game again.
Exactly.
Well, exactly. And I think, and a couple of Predators fans pointed this out yesterday on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. His performances in games 3 and 4 also kind of flashed you back to game 2 as well. I thought he was every bit as good. I mean, I thought he was awesome in game 2. And you go 0 for 7 on the power play. Like that could be something you look back on at the end of a 7-game series as a gigantic missed opportunity. I do think with the way that Saros has played thus far, there is a scenario where they could be up 3-1 in this series heading back. And look, I'm not saying that they've outplayed Carolina by any stretch of the imagination, but that's just how good UC Saros has been for the most part, in my opinion, in this series.
Yeah, but you could also say that for Carolina.
Sure.
Carolina easily could have won game 4. And as we always say, all the games can be close, but mathematically and statistically, but there's a huge difference between 2-2 and 3-1, and we're seeing that right now. And now all of a sudden, with the series knotted at 2, the Predators, I think, have beyond a puncher's chance. I think Carolina has seen that the Preds aren't going anywhere, that they can sit there and say, yeah, those last 2 games of the season really didn't mean anything. But in reality, maybe they did a little bit. But I think it was those last 2 games were more indicative of who the Predators were maybe than the Hurricanes were. And the Predators have done what we haven't seen a lot of times with teams, and that is carry over what you did late in the season to the playoffs. That doesn't always happen. That doesn't always translate. And again, this coaching staff, which has really been maligned. I mean, let's face it. Yeah. And I'll plead guilty to it. I was very unimpressed with how this coaching staff, handled this team, for the first, season and a half, first, 2 seasons or whatever. But the second half of this season and the playoffs, I think they've done a phenomenal job. I mean, to me, Hines deserves some Jack Adams consideration. I know the playoffs don't count, but if you look what he did, and I understand that that award usually goes to one of the best teams in the league point-wise, but you look at what Hines did, to me, and he should get some consideration.
Yeah, he's been awesome, and I think, we talked about how much credit he deserves for this turnaround coming down the stretch. The word that keeps coming up is buy-in. And John Hines has made it clear, look, this is what he's been preaching with this group for a while, and now that they've bought in, you've seen the difference with this group. Now, it helps when you've got your goaltender playing as well as he has, but I agree with you, Mark. I think he deserves a ton of credit for what we've seen in this turnaround and so far with what we've seen in this series as well. We'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. What's your confidence level that UC Saros can continue this level of play and steal this series for the Predators as they move forward here? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game.
Ryan, we've run out of superlatives to describe the play of UC Saros this season, but to see him pitch back-to-back 50-plus save games and win double overtime games, what can you say about the play of UC in the last 2 games?
He's a stud. He's a big part of our team's success and our success right now in winning these last 2 games. So, like I said, he's a stud, and he's going to keep doing his thing, and we're going to keep counting on him. And just all we're going to do now is prepare for Game 5 and get some rest to the rest of the day.
First Predators forward Ryan Johansson after Game 4 when the Predators even up the series. UC Saros, the story of Games 3 and 4, making 110 saves in the last 2 games, 2 double overtime wins for the Nashville Predators. They head into Game 5 tonight with the best of 7 series, evened at 2 games apiece. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Robbie Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you today on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. So, Mark, let's throw it out there. As you watch the way UC Saros has played and you watch the way this series against Carolina has developed so far, how much confidence do you have that UC Saros can steal this series for the Predators and that the Predators can advance past Carolina?
I think it's doable. And it's so funny, Robbie. You look at what the Predators have right now, and then you look at a team like Edmonton, who, has, in terms of skill, has way more than the Predators. Predators are better in other areas, but let's face it. Man-to-man, Edmonton's pretty good. And they got swept. They absolutely gagged. They blew a 4-1 lead in Game 3, and you can just imagine what's going on, inside of their locker room. And now look at the Preds. It's all for one for all. You've got guys like Duchesne and Johansson playing their best hockey, really since they've been here, and it takes something special. It takes really good coaching. It takes a really good room, to really almost to bring out the best in just about everybody. And it's interesting to me, Robbie, that guys are being sat. You obviously don't hear a lot of complaints, but whatever they have to do, they'll do. And yeah, I absolutely think they can, and I think they do too. I don't think they're out of gas. I know they've played the equivalent of 3 games in the last 3 days with the overtimes. But the other thing too that's sort of to me good for the Predators is that the travel is not prohibitive. They're not going coast to coast like they did. The year they lost to San Jose, where they were just totally out of gas for Game 7. That's not going to be a problem this time around. And I just think what they have going right now, I think they can definitely pull the upset. And it's interesting to hear the analysis around the league. What started as almost a foregone conclusion that Carolina was going to win this series, suddenly everybody says, hey, look at the Predators. Games 3 and 4. Yeah. That's a series I want to watch because it's highly contentious. Every game is close, and that's what makes it fun. And when you get into the playoffs, as we know, interesting things can happen.
Absolutely. And Mark, we didn't really bring this up much yesterday on the show either, but it's been pretty amazing to me just to see how night and day this penalty kill is right now from where they started the year. Like, I think back to that Dallas game really early in the year. UC Saros was in net, and they just got lit up by the Stars on the power play. I think they gave up 5 power play goals that night against Dallas. And, the penalty kill numbers were horrible to begin the season for the Predators. UC Saros was a part of that in net. His save percentage at one point was down in the 880s. I mean, it wasn't looking good for the Predators. And to watch this penalty kill so far in this series, Carolina's had their moments on the power play. They've got a top 3 power play in the NHL. They're going to have their moments. But for the most part, and I think UC Saros deserves a lot of credit for this too, this penalty killing unit has done such a good job so far in the series. As much as we bemoan the power play and how bad it was in Game 2, and that's always going to be a topic of conversation around here until it gets fixed on a permanent basis, I've been blown away with how consistently good the penalty kill has been, not only so far in this series, but really the last 2-3 weeks of the regular season as well. They've taken that thing up to a different notch here.
Well, you ask any coach, what's the key to a good penalty kill? He says a good goaltender. But it's more than that. And now you're right. Not only has the penalty kill been effective, but it's given the team momentum. And especially in this series where Carolina really feels like if they get on the power play, they can make some things happen. And the way the Preds have shut them down, it gets into your heads. I mean, I think we can all remember, those years where the Preds were favored in that first round series. I remember the series with Winnipeg where where the joke was, if you go on the power play, just decline the penalty, because not only did they not score, but it sucked the momentum out of them. Well, the penalty kill is sort of having the opposite effect, and I think that's been a huge asset for them.
Oh, it has, and that's going to have to continue as they move forward here. But I've just been blown away with that. And look, guys that have received a lot of grief. I mean, we've gotten so many texts the last couple of days talking about Ben Harper and how he needs to be out of the lineup. I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job on the penalty kill. Matt Benning has come in. I think has done a pretty good job as well. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done on that penalty kill there. I just look at this Game 5 tonight, Mark, and we talked about it a little bit earlier as well. I expect a really good game tonight from Carolina. If you're the Predators, not only do you need Saros to be as good as he's been so far in this series, but you've got to have, your Johansson line continue to stack good performances. I thought Granlund and Cunnin in particular had a huge response in games 3 and 4 after, quite frankly, I thought they were pretty invisible in the first 2 games of this series. It's one thing to do it at home when you're in a little bit more control of your matchups. I think sometimes, the matchup part of this can get overblown a little bit, but in playoff hockey, how many times have we seen, and Brendan Moore has not been afraid to do it so far in this series either, of really playing the matchup game heavily and trying to get that third pair out there as much against that Aho line as he possibly can, that burned the Predators in Game 1. It burned them to a certain degree in Game 2 as well, although I thought the Predators were better at 5-on-5 in that game. But this is a whole different test for this group going back on the road tonight with not having that last change heading into Game 5.
Oh, you're right. And it becomes more accented when you get into the playoffs. But, Robby, I can almost guarantee you that one of the things that John Hines is going to say to the Predators before they go out on the ice tonight, and that is first 10 minutes. Just weather the storm in the first 10 minutes, and things will hopefully equalize a little bit, because I guarantee you Carolina is going to come out big time. And I just think if the Preds can survive those first 10 minutes and then push back, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we heard that exact sentiment being expressed by teams at Bridgestone Arena too? I mean, that's definitely something I think you're going to have to keep your eye on tonight. ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball, and tonight the Sounds are on AAA affiliate of the Cleveland Indians. The pregame show with Jeff Hem starts at 5:50, and first pitch is at 6:05. Nashville Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and by 312 Pizza Company. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Nashville Predators. John Hines has made a shrewd move in this series. It's worked out very well for the Predators. Could it be a permanent solution for the lineup moving forward? We'll talk about that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Race fans, the iconic Indy 500 is this Sunday, and the Big Machine Vodka Music City Grand Prix, along with 102.5 The Game, invites you to our official Indy 500 watch party at Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Come watch the race, win Music City Grand Prix tickets and swag, plus check out the Big Machine Vodka Indy racing car that will be on display. There will be a great drink specials from your friends at Bud Light Seltzer and live music all day long. It's the Big Machine Vodka Music City Grand Prix Indy 500 watch party this Sunday, 11 a.m. at Scoreboard Bar and Grill over on Music Valley Drive. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And Game 5 coming up tonight between the Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes. And Mark, a pretty shrewd move made by John Hynes early on in this series. It did not go well for Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis in Game 1. And Adam Vingan from The Athletic kind of came out with a piece pointing out the differences in the regular season effectiveness and the playoff effectiveness over the course of the past few years with Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis together as a pairing. John Hynes didn't waste much time. He made the move heading into Game 2 to switch things up. Alex Carrier goes up with Roman Josi. Ryan Ellis slides down with Matthias Ekholm, who they have been familiar with each other in the past. They've played together in the past and have generally played pretty well. And so far, Mark, I think you got to like the results if you're John Hynes and this coaching staff, to the point where I think you have to consider, could this start to be maybe a permanent solution as they move forward through the rest of the playoffs here with Alex Carrier and Roman Josi being together as a pair and Ellis playing with Matthias Ekholm?
Well, it's an interesting question because, you look at the Preds' future, and it's got to include Ferentz and Fabro. And right now, neither one of them, Ferentz, for obvious reasons, they just signed him, but it certainly gives them more options. And it's going to be interesting to see, what impact, will it have on the Predators roster. And I don't think anybody, at least for me, I never saw Carrier as a first pair defenseman, but it's working right now. And
I think you could say anybody. Yeah, anybody's probably the right word.
Carrier was thought to be, a seventh or an eighth defenseman, maybe a sixth, but obviously that hasn't been the case. And Ellis and Ekholm make a lot of sense that they would play well together. But that's been and that again to me shows you a little bit more about John Hynes, that he's not afraid, to try something different. He's not afraid, to take something that a lot of people felt like was sort of written in stone, that Ellis and Josi would be paired together. But he actually made everybody better by doing it, which is really interesting. Ellis is playing better with Ekholm, and obviously Yosi's playing better. And, he had to get Josi out of his funk. And I don't know, how much that had to do with puck carrying responsibilities or whatever. But that they've definitely cleaned it up on that end. And you got to give the coaches credit for thinking outside the box and deciding to change things up in a way a lot of people wouldn't do, especially during the playoffs.
Yeah, especially during the playoffs. And I got to say, Mark, I've been blown away with just how well Alex Carrier has responded to this type of pressure. Not just pressure of playing in the playoffs as a rookie and this is your first playoff run, all that goes with that, but just the pressure of playing with Roman Josi. It's obvious what the game plan is for teams when they're going up against Roman Josi. They want to try to limit as much as they can him carrying the puck up the ice, him making plays through the neutral zone. He's by far the best defenseman in the NHL in terms of that. The stats bear that out. There's nobody particularly close in terms of the controlled zone entries that he's got. So if you're Carolina, you're trying to take that away as much as you possibly can. And in order to do that, and in order to combat that, if you're the Predators, you've got to have some clean exits coming out of your defensive zone. And I think Alex Carrier deserves a lot of credit for that because he and Roman Josi have seemed to develop the pretty instantaneous chemistry back there of trying to get out of trouble in a hurry. A lot of times, especially with a team like Carolina that's as aggressive as they are on that forecheck and as fast as they can be, that can be very difficult to do. And Carrier had some mistakes in game 3, and you thought maybe game 4, and you thought maybe the one to begin that third period could be the one that ultimately doomed the Predators when they took that 3-2 lead off of a turnover and kind of a missed exchange there between he and Roman Josi. Outside of that play, I think they've been pretty rock solid in that area.
And the thing on Josi, the book on Josi is you got to physical him up, and that will bother him. And you're right. That would, to try to limit, how much he carries the puck, out of the defensive end and through the neutral zone. And Carrier has definitely, relieved him of some of that burden. And it's made Josi better because now he gets into the offensive zone and becomes a more effective player. And again, know your personnel. Know your guys and not be afraid to make those adjustments. Now, it's going to be interesting to me, guys, what Brind'Amour does, because Carolina has a lot of depth. And I wouldn't be surprised tonight if we see a player or two dressing for either the first time or maybe he shakes things up a little bit, even though they've been playing well. Just Brind'Amour trying to give Carolina a little bit of a spark because they've got the depth on their roster to do that.
What percentage chance do you give that Nedeljkovic is pulled and Peter Mrazek is in there tonight?
Why would you pull Nedeljkovic? I mean, good grief. He was unbelievable.
It's a panic move if Brind'Amour does that, but we've seen that before in Predators playoff series.
Yeah.
And Mrazek has the Preds number over the years. I wouldn't put it at 0%. I mean, it would be a very, very, very low percent
either. But if that happens, if I'm the Predators, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons why the series is 2-2 from Carolina's standpoint, and Nedeljkovic is not one of the reasons why they've lost 2 games. So I don't know why he would do it, but yeah, you're right. He's got 3 choices, actually. But Mrazek would be a guy that he would throw at Nashville because of his history. But I think the Preds would be happy to see Mrazek after the way Nedeljkovic has been playing.
Mark, why do you think it feels like Ryan Ellis is such a good fit with Mattias Ekholm? Now, I'm not going to say that they're absolutely a better fit. Maybe they are in the playoffs. I don't know, because I do think Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis together have done a lot of really good things, and the numbers would bear that out too. But why, in your opinion, does it feel like Ellis and Ekholm are just such a good fit and have been really every time they've been put together in their career so far?
It's a great question, and sometimes it's just stylistically they just seem to match up better. We've seen Ellis at times get pushed around. Especially when he's with Josi, Eki can be a little more physical, and I think that takes, again, some of the burden off of Ellis to do what he wants to do. But, we've seen Ellis at times, his lack of stature by bigger players, being taken advantage of, and you just don't see it as much with Ekholm.
Mark, I know when you look at this series so far, especially since Matt Benning has come in, and I think he's done a pretty good job so far in this series, it's hard to argue with what John Hines has done at this point. But if you would have told me heading into this season and heading into this series that we would be 4 games in and Dante Fabro's healthy and we've not seen him yet to this point, definitely would have raised my eyebrows on that one. How concerned would you be about that if you're a Predators fan, that you're a first-round defenseman, your guy that came into the season being a top 4 guy for you, has not found a way to get on the ice yet in this lineup? How concerning would that be for you if you're a Predators fan?
Not very. I remember the timeline for Ryan Ellis and how many times he was a healthy scratch his first couple of years with the team. Defensemen, just characteristically, in most cases, just take longer to develop. They're brought along slowly. We remember when Seth Jones got here, and a lot of it was because of who was playing ahead of him. But you bring those guys along slowly. You don't want to shatter their confidence. I always bring up, Jonathan Blum, and how good he was in that Anaheim series. And after that, he just, for whatever reason, just played his way out of the league. So, think about this, Robby. With the way Carrier's playing and the fact that you're sitting Fabro and Ferentz, although, Ferentz, they're both on their first contracts, who do the Preds protect in the expansion draft if all of a sudden keeping Carrier becomes a priority? I mean,
that's a great question.
If you're Seattle, all of a sudden, maybe you're not taking Tolvanen. Maybe, you're not taking one of the other forwards. Maybe you're always looking for good D, and all of a sudden Carrier, becomes an option. And if you're David, what do? So, that becomes, that creates, a headache down the line, but I guess a headache that David would like to have.
Absolutely. And Mark, it just continues to amaze me how this team, this franchise just pumps out defensemen. I mean, I'm watching Sam Girard the other night. They drafted him. He's an absolute stud. Seth Jones, Ryan Suter. I mean, they're all over the league, and it just continues to just amaze me how this is just a defenseman factory here in Nashville.
What was it, a couple of years ago? I did the all former Preds team in the league right now, and their back end's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I don't know.
Guys.
I don't know if the forwards are all that great.
Well, forwards aren't bad. Maybe with the first two lines. I mean, now you'd have what? You have Fiala, you have Hornquist.
Yeah.
And then
now you put Radulov in there.
Yeah, Radulov. Yeah.
It's improved in the last couple of years. We'll say that.
Yeah, better. And you've d fantastic Freddie Gaudreau, who's
that's true,
having a great series with the Penguins. That one's like I'd sort of forgotten about him, and then I saw he scored a goal, and I went, Freddie Gaudreau,
just lighting it up for the Penguins.
Yeah,
yep,
exactly. And you got Ryan Hartman.
Yeah, he's lighting it up. For
Ryan
Minnesota
Hartman's
too.
been a pretty good player for Minnesota.
He has. All of a sudden, hey, look, Porth's forward team's better than you made it out to be.
Yeah,
I spoke too soon.
Yeah, you did. When we come back, speaking of forwards, two of them stepped up in a big way in game 3 and 4 for the Predators. What does that mean for the future as we move forward here throughout the rest of this series? And what could it mean for the future of this franchise as a whole when it comes to Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe is out today. He'll be back tomorrow, traveling back from Florida today, so he'll be back in the saddle tomorrow. Right now, talking all things Nashville Predators, taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And Mark, a big story heading into the rest of the series here is what version of Ryan Johansen and Matt Duchene are we going to see as we move forward here? They were awesome in games 3 and 4. Duchene gets the game winner in game 3. Ryan Johansen scores a goal in both game 3 and in game 4 as well. And united together on a line with Philip Forsberg, that trio looked pretty impressive for the most part in these last 2 games for the Predators. And it was interesting to see that line combination put together. We saw it in the very last game of the regular season against Carolina, where Carolina had half their lineup out. The Predators had half their lineup out. But Johansen, Duchene, and Forsberg left in the game and put together on a line. I found that very interesting at the time. And I said on the show, John Hines is doing that for a reason. He wants to see what this line looks like together. And here we are in this series. And so far, the early returns have been good. Mark, what were your initial impressions of putting that line together, and what did you think of the way they played in games 3 and 4?
Yeah, you can go with a lot of different philosophies. You can split your lines up and try to balance them a little bit. Or, in the case of the Predators, I think when you're a prohibitive underdog, you try to put together one number one line. I just feel like when you don't have the personnel that the other team does, you need to do that. So it was something with RV dinged up seemed pretty logical. But they played really well together, and there is no questioning Matt Duchene's skill, his speed and his hands and everything else. And we're finally getting a better taste of it, because we certainly haven't seen it his first couple of years here. He just never seemed to play with a sense of urgency, and he seems to have been doing that the last 2 games. As far as Johansen is concerned, I've quit trying to analyze Ryan Johansen and just enjoy the good moments he gives us, because just when you start to love him, he leaves you. I don't know. It's a great question. You've got 2 guys making $8 million a year that are probably more valuable here than they are in the trade market, and that's the other problem. And guys like Johansen don't grow on trees. He is a number 1 center. He doesn't shoot as much as you want him to. He's a little bit up and down, but he hasn't been horrible. He's been solid. He hasn't been spectacular. That's a guy that who do you replace him with unless it's Duchene? So I don't know the way David is looking at the roster next year. He's got a lot of questions to answer. I think all of us now would love to see Grantling come back. That's been sort of a weird thing. And how do they feel about their younger players? Rem Pitlick, a lot of people don't know this. You guys probably do. Rem Pitlick is essentially the player they got for Jimmy Vesey. The way the draft pick shook out, and he was picked with a 3rd pick that was involved in a deal for Jaromir Jagr and some really good players. It was that draft pick was owned by like 4 different teams. But about Pitlick, Tomasino, do you keep him another year in the American Hockey League, where he definitely showed that he could play? He was a point-a-game player for the Chicago Wolves this year. And that's a guy that we think we're going to see. Who do you keep? Do you bring Haula back? What about the guys that you signed to 1-year contracts? So David's got a lot of decisions to make. There are guys who have probably earned more money on the open market because of the way they played here that probably won't come back. And then you've got the expansion draft. So there are a whole bunch of scenarios that we have to go through till we really start to get a feel for how David's going to construct his roster next year.
Adam Vingan from The Athletic joined Stillman Company and talked about the unification of Duchesne and Johansson on that top line alongside Philip Forsberg, and maybe the message that John Hines was sending to those guys as well. Here's what Adam Vingan had to say.
When we talked to John Hines before Game 3 and he talked about the changes they were going to make on the power play, I don't think any of us expected that those changes would involve Ryan and Matt not being on them. Maybe they were on different power play units, or maybe they were put in a different position on the power play, but nobody expected them to be completely off the power play. So I do think that was sort of, like I said, I know it's not the most eloquent terms, but I do think it was a bit of message sending that he needed more from those players, as he said, between games 1 and 2. And that was one way he was going to try to get it out of them, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think this is kind of a short run move, but a good move. When you're in the playoffs, you have to make it seem like it's a meritocracy with your players. In other words, your playing time is equal to what you're giving the team. It doesn't matter what your salary is. It doesn't matter what your status is in the league. And I think he sent that message with Johansson and Duchesne. I don't think in the long term, I don't even know beyond this series if we're going to see those two guys off the power play. But, he did. I mean, he certainly served up some chin music to both of those guys, to let them know that if he doesn't get more from them, they're going to see a lot less when it comes to time on the ice.
Oh, I agree. I don't think, having both of those guys off the power play, I don't think is a long-term solution here for the Predators. I think at some point you're gonna need both those guys to be on the power play. Not only be on the power play, but be productive on the power play as well. But I do find it interesting. You take them off the power play. That was as noticeable as Ryan Johansson has been in a long time. And look, you're right. I mean, he's not been horrible. I think he's done a lot of good things this year. He's been solid in a lot of areas. But there is a bottom line in terms of production of what a player is paid and what they're bringing to the table, and your basic points and your goals and your assist stats. And look, there is a certain image of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchesne right now with a lot of fans in this fan base. I don't know if 2 games, I don't even know if 1 series is going to go about changing that image totally. But I do think, after these last couple of games, and I said this after Game 3 as well, yes, they have been overpaid relative to the production that they've had recently. And yes, there's got to be more there from Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchesne. But I thought Game 3, and they followed it up in Game 4 as well, was a pretty nice reminder, Mark, of what they can be when they're at the top of their game.
I think this might be a little bit unfair, but when David gave out big money to Paul Kariya, Kariya came in and just, set a standard for his professionalism about the way he prepared for games, about how meticulous he was, every day in practice. Every day, he had this whole ritual that he was almost OCD about. But my point is, he came in, with a big reputation and lived up to it. And Duchesne came in, and I think we can all agree, not a better guy than Matt Duchesne. He's been great with the media. Fans like him. I've always said nobody loved Nashville more as an incoming player than Matt Duchesne. But his production on the ice has been minuscule compared to what we expected. And finally, we're starting to see him look like a star player, look like a top 6 forward, really a top 3 forward. And my response to that is, keep it up. It's not, 2 games doesn't make a postseason. But the problem with guys like Duchesne and even Johansson, when we see their best, we want more of it, and they don't give us enough of it.
Yeah, man, that's been the issue that's been there from Ryan Johansson. I always see in this, Mark, you'll remember this. There used to be this moniker, this nickname that's thrown around to Colin Wilson. And look, Colin Wilson, Ryan Johansson, two completely different players. But there was always this playoff Colin Wilson that seemed to come out of nowhere, and he would light up the Blackhawks for 6 games, or he'd have 6 points in 5 games against the Red Wings, or whatever it was with Colin Wilson. He just seemed to elevate his game when the playoffs come around. I mean, that's been largely the same with Ryan Johansen. Now, he's had some productive regular seasons. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, he had 50 assists in the regular season. So it's not like he hasn't done it in the regular season, but I don't think there's any question when you look at his numbers, he has taken his game to a completely different level in the playoffs, which you like that to some degree if you're a Predators fan. I think it also leaves you asking the question in the regular season, all right, we know you could do it. We've seen you take your game to a higher level before. Why does this not happen more often throughout the course of a regular season?
Yeah, he took his game to a completely different level in the regular season and not in a good way. And it was amazing. Yeah. He did a better job of disappearing than David Copperfield. And you can't have that when you make that kind of investment.
When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on Ryan Johansen and Matt Duchene. Got some thoughts to get to as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9, noon, and at 3 o'clock. And when you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing Ryan Johansen and Matt Duchene. Big-time performances in Game 3 and Game 4 as well. Can they keep that going here for the rest of the series against the Hurricanes? And we brought up some audio last segment from Adam Vingan on Stillman Company, and he had more to say about Ryan Johansen and Matt Duchene being taken off the power play and whether or not that's a good move for the Predators as they move forward here. Here's what Adam Vingan from The Athletic had to say.
With Matt Duchene, you referenced the grand piano on his back. I even think he said something to that effect at the beginning of the season about how he felt like he was carrying a piano on his back during last season because of the expectations of the contract and the long courting process between him and the Predators. And, I've seen a renewed drive from both of them in these past 2 games. And I do think some of that is the fact that John Hynes took them off the power play. Like, that's not, we talk about lineup changes. I think that decision by John Hynes might have been the most impactful personnel decision that he's made through 4 games.
Mark, when you hear those words from Adam saying it might be the most impactful personnel decision that John Hynes has made through 4 games, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with that from Adam?
Well, first of all, the other city that Duchene was considering, going to next to Nashville was Montreal. So if he thinks
thinks he's carrying a piano on his back here, he's carrying the whole orchestra on his back if he's in Montreal. So I don't want to hear about the vicious Nashville media and the expectations. Come on, Matt. Come on, you're better than that. No, as far as what Adam said, I agree 1,000%. I think he's totally on the money with it. And like I said, I mean, that's a pretty gutsy coaching move because if it backfires, if it goes against them, he gets second guessed from the vicious Nashville media from here to Kingdom Come. And again, sometimes this is where you've got to trust your instincts. And Hynes has a great feel for his team. He knows those guys, and what he did, though counterintuitive, has turned out to be, at least in the short run, the right move to make.
Well, if you think about the power play adjustment he made tactically, like I was sitting there for Game 3, and when they rolled out Haula and Cousins and Carrier on the power play unit, I was thinking to myself, like, is this an overreaction by John Hynes to what happened in the first 2 games of the series with the power play? And a caller brought up an interesting point yesterday on Stillman Company, which was asking the question of, was this yet another adjustment by Hynes to combat the Hurricanes' shorthanded unit that got so many opportunities in the first 2 games while a man down? Is this almost an adjustment to keep that from happening when you have Alexander Carrier out there on your first power play unit? Are you trying to, still be productive on the power play, which they have been with a goal in each of the last 2 games on the power play, while also trying to take away one of the big advantages that Carolina had in the first 2 games, which was their shorthanded unit just putting all sorts of pressure on UC Saros?
Yeah, I think that's got to be some of it. I mean, you just can't, be so worried about your power play being a huge negative that you're worried about getting a shorty scored on you, when you roll them out there.
Right.
I mean, you're hoping, to get an advantage out there, and sometimes you're right. It does start working against you.
But the other thing too that Hynes has been doing is right after the power play's done, he's putting Duchene and Johansen out there right after the power play instead of the Hurd line or another line, and that has kept the momentum going from a power play rather than a missed power play, hurting the momentum within a game.
No, and that's why I'm really becoming a fan of his, because he seems to have a really great feel for his team, especially in game, and when to roll certain lines out situationally. I think John Hines has been one of the biggest pluses for the Predators through 4 games than just about anything, because he's done such a great job of deploying his personnel and just the way they say the essence of coaching is putting your players in a position to succeed, and I think he's done a phenomenal job of that.
Go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Andrew on the text line says, is Ryan Johansen the ultimate annual rental player, someone that always has great postseasons but is so-so in the regular season, assuming each year he could be traded, not in the normal definition of a rental, due a short contract or an expiring contract? Mark, do you think we're always going to be having these conversations around Ryan Johansen as long as he's here, in terms of wanting to see more in the regular season, but taking his game up a notch where he is a very productive player come postseason time?
I hope not. I hope that Hines becomes the coach that gets the most out of Johansen. Doing what John Tortorella, who John Tortorella did for a while, but ultimately couldn't do. And then Peter Laviolette, at least for a little while, but couldn't sustain it. So, we've seen this pattern of behavior with his 2 previous coaches. Now, can he sustain this? So I don't know. I think there are certain guys that are just always bound to break your heart a little bit. David Legwan, I probably have as good a relationship with Leggy as anybody who's ever played here. I still consider him a friend. But Leggy always left you wanting more. I mean, he had so much physical talent. And, yeah, there were some years where he put up some good numbers, but he wasn't quite the guy that everybody wanted him to be. And you wonder if that's what we're going to say about Johansen in 3 or 4 years.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, why praise John Hines? Duchesne, Johansen, and Forsberg should have been together sooner. What do you think about that, Mark?
I don't necessarily agree with that. When Duchesne came in, the thought was the Jofa line was working really well. The Jofa line was one of the best lines in the league. And the point with Duchesne was maybe he was going to be the center, for a much better second line, but it hasn't worked out that way. And let's face it, as the options narrowed, it pretty much, made sense, to make that move. But no, it certainly wasn't obvious, the whole time since Duchesne has been here.
Well, and Duchesne's made it clear. Like he said it when he signed here. Yeah. He signed here to be a center. Yeah. Now, look, he's not in much of a position and hasn't been the last couple of years based on his production to really make any demands whatsoever. So he's going to play where they put him at this point, and I think he's fit in nicely on the wing alongside Johansen and Forsberg. But let's not act like this has been something that should have happened a year ago at this point. He was supposed to be the center. Yeah,
and we all said when he got here, I'm sure we'll see at some point, he'll be up there with Forsberg and Johansen, just out of curiosity as much as anything else. This is no shock. Take your best 3 forwards and put them together. Duh. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of critical thinking to do that.
It does not. That is for sure. When we come back, we will switch gears and get into a little NFL news as well. Some interesting developments yesterday with Julio Jones and the Atlanta Falcons. We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Robbie Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And Mark, it was an interesting day yesterday in the NFL. As we know, Shannon Sharpe and Skip Bayless do a show on FS1 called Undisputed, and they were talking about what the future could look like for Julio Jones and the Atlanta Falcons. And all of a sudden, Shannon Sharpe pulls out his cell phone. He starts to hit the buttons, and all of a sudden, there's Julio Jones on the phone with Shannon Sharpe. And the audio that took place after that, pretty incredible to watch in live time. Here's what that conversation sounded like between Shannon Sharpe and Julio Jones.
You want to go to the Cowboys, Julio, or you want to stay in Atlanta?
Oh, man, I'm out of there, man.
You out?
He's out of there.
Are you going to – ideally, where would you like to go?
Right now, I want to win.
Okay. Well, don't go to Dallas. If you go to – you ain't winning in Dallas, Julio.
Man, listen, come on, man. You already know I know.
Okay.
Can you remind him we're on television
Ask
right
him
now?
why we wore the Dallas.
Listen. You know how people is, man, with all that going on with the picture.
Yeah.
And all that stuff like that.
Okay.
Man, I ain't never been on that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. That's good enough.
So that was Shannon Sharpe on the phone with Julio Jones live on television on Undisputed. Number one, do we think Julio Jones knew that he was on live television at that point? Because it just looked like Shannon Sharpe pulled out his phone and called him up and just started talking at that point. Do we think Julio Jones had any idea he was on live TV at that point?
Yes. I'm sure. I'm sure that Shannon Sharpe, told him, "We're going to call you. Here's the deal." Yes, because you don't. If you have a relationship, with a guy like that, you don't want to sandbag him and then say, "Oh, by the way, we're live on television." So I'm sure it was a calculated move in this off season of ultimatums. Add Julio Jones now to the list.
So what do you think of that, Mark? I mean, look, this is no big surprise. Jeff Schultz from The Athletic reporting later last week that Julio Jones and the Atlanta Falcons, they're going to move on from each other. Atlanta's going to try to trade Julio Jones this offseason after June 1st. So, look, it's no big surprise that it looks like he's going to be out of there, and that's the word that Julio Jones used, said he's out of there. What do you think of Julio Jones potentially being a fit for the Titans? Right now, from a salary cap perspective, it would take some gymnastics from John Robinson and the Titans to find a way to make this work. Do you think that's an avenue they should pursue? How realistic do you think Julio Jones to the Titans really is?
Yeah, it would take some real gymnastics. I still see how the Titans can do it, and I don't really see how the Titans match up with Atlanta in terms of a trade. You look and see what a lot of people feel like the Falcons can get, maybe 2 2s, maybe a 1, and a starter. Well, the problem with the Titans, they have some good players, but they don't have a lot of depth. So tell me an area where they have so much depth where they could trade a player that can go and help Atlanta. And I just don't know, if that's going to happen. And just cap-wise, I mean, this is such a bad year to make a trade like that. I think a team like the 49ers will make a play for him. Maybe a team like Philadelphia if he wants to go there. The problem is, the team will take the best deal they can. They're not going to take the best team for the player. They're going to take the best deal for them. It was like the Texans. If they thought before all this stuff with Deshaun Watson started happening, if they thought they were going to send Deshaun Watson exactly where he wanted to go, that probably wasn't going to be the case. You send him where you get the most for him. So I don't think anybody's surprised. But from the Titans' perspective, I don't think they have the draft capital, and I definitely don't think they have a player that they, theoretically, I guess they could. You could ship maybe Jayon Brown, who could help them, or another player, that Arthur Smith, really likes. But offensively, who are you going to take? they're not trading A.J. Brown. They're not trading Derrick Henry. They're not trading Tannehill. After that, and you don't want to lose any of your offensive line starters. So who are you going to trade? I mean, they don't have an extra tight end. They don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. So I'm really not sure, how they can make the Falcons happy. So he could end up going somewhere. And a team like the Patriots could probably accommodate the Falcons because they've got, they still have a lot of draft picks stockpiled, and they've got a lot of players, even though they're not, we don't know what the story is at quarterback. So I think there are teams out there, and Julio Jones is a stud. Julio Jones is not only a great receiver, he's a great blocker. I mean, he's just a terrific football player. In terms of character, they just don't come, better than him. So in that area, I don't think there are any questions. It's just a matter of in a year where the cap is down and teams are really scrambling. I mean, they're getting players, for below market value. So this becomes a tricky situation if you want out, like Julio Jones does, and presumably Aaron Rodgers.
Well, and to that point, it's going to be interesting to see what the price tag is going to be for Julio Jones to get him out of there, because according to reports, he requested a trade back in March, and Schefter coming out yesterday and saying that teams have asked about Julio Jones with the Falcons, and that the Falcons at this point are asking for a first-round pick in return for Julio Jones. He's 32 years old. To your point, he's still a really, really good player, but he has had some injuries the last couple of years. 32 years old, on the downside of his career.
His shelf life's 1, maybe 2 years.
Yeah, you're not giving up a first-round pick for Julio Jones in all likelihood, and that's, according to Schefter, teams are questioning whether or not Atlanta is going to be able to get a first-round pick for Julio Jones.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robby, and I think another team that might make a play for him is Baltimore. That's a team that again always seems to have a surplus of draft picks because they always they always get extras because they don't mind letting players walk away. So that would be a team. They'd probably try to give Lamar Jackson another target, and that to me would be a team that might be in play here.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Titans fans last week when we were having that conversation, very worried about the Indianapolis Colts as well. That would not be good news for the Titans if Carson Wentz gets another weapon in Indianapolis with the Colts.
Yeah, Indy has a ton of cap space, and they've got a little bit of draft capital, and they would definitely have the money to accommodate Julio Jones. And you're right. That's a team that has really done a good job of roster building and drafting, and now they have the cap space that a lot of their competitors don't.
We'll continue to get your thoughts on Julio Jones when we come back on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Also, we'll get some takes from Mark Howard on what the Titans wide receiver room looks like right now. What is the state of the receiver room? How much of a concern is that for the Titans as they head into this next season? You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. 1025 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered up to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Make sure you tune it in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from 1025 The Game, T-Mobile, and Nashville SC. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, and Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the state of the Titans wide receiver room. Now, obviously, a lot of noise out there right now with Julio Jones. As Mark and I have pointed out, it's going to take a lot if the Titans are going to have to get or are able to get Julio Jones in the wide receiver room here from a salary cap standpoint. So, Mark, if it's not going to be Julio Jones and the Titans are riding into at least the training camp portion of the start of this season with the receiving room as is, what do you think of this receiving room for the Titans? Are you concerned about it? What's your level of confidence in A.J. Brown being the one? You would assume Josh Reynolds is the two right now in that receiving room. And then a whole lot of unknowns after that in the wide receiving room right now for the Titans.
I think that list is yet to be completed. Right now, I think they definitely need another receiver or two. I don't think there's any question about it. We're still not sure, who's going to be in the slot. There are some names out there, such as, Golden Tate and, guys like that. I don't know if that exactly, gets everybody excited. Anthony Miller, the Bears want to unload. Kenny Stills is out there, who hasn't done much of anything the last few years except get suspended, and Marvin Hall. But June 1 is an important day because, that's where teams are going to cut some players, for salary cap reasons, and will because it's advantageous by league rules, to cut guys June 1. So I think more guys will be out there. I'm as concerned about the tight end position as I am about anything, and I agree with Rexrode. Who likes Zach Ertz? That would be a name that would get me excited. But as far as wide receiver, we always get enamored with these names and what they're going to cost and all that. And I think we've learned too that much like scores in hockey, the best way to get these guys is to draft and develop them. But I think there could be a guy or two out there after June 1. That will pique John Robinson's interest.
I think there could be two. And Turron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, was on with Stillman Company and had some interesting thoughts on the Titans wide receiver room, including an alternative idea at wide receiver as well. Here's what Turron Davenport from ESPN had to say.
To me, ideally, they would get a guy like Jamison Crowder. And I keep mentioning his name over and over again because he's a guy that could go in there as a slot and really he's a proven player, and he's a guy that is a consistent chain mover. And I've seen him, when he was playing for Washington football team, I saw him firsthand just do things to the Eagles on third downs that just, I love Malcolm Jenkins' game, but I saw him do some things to Jenkins that just, it wasn't right. And those are the type of players that you need in those third down situations, especially an offense like the Titans that likes to work that ball control and secure, drives down the field and just eat up clock, right? So their defense doesn't have to be on the field all the time. So I think he's the guy that definitely fits what they do.
So, Mark, what do you think of that thrown out there by TD yesterday, talking about Jamison Crowder? Obviously, he has been stuck in the wasteland that is the New York Jets for the last couple of years, spent the first part of his career with the Washington football team. And you're talking about a guy, he had 59 catches last year, 700 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns on an awful, awful New York Jets team. When you hear the name Jamison Crowder that TD has thrown out there potentially for the Titans, what comes to mind? What would you think of that fit?
Well, TD, as always, is on the money, and I think Jamison Crowder, really fits the profile of what the Titans want. He's a great guy to have in the locker room for starters, but yeah, he's a pro, and I think you plug him in, and you don't have to worry for another year or two, and then next year, hopefully, they can draft that slot guy. But they've got that, and I think they've got to go out and hope that a good tight end falls in their lap.
I think so too. And look, obviously the Titans feel great about Dez Fitzpatrick. They drafted him, with the 4th round, and you look at his career, he was a productive player at Louisville, but you're talking about a rookie. You don't know what you're going to get out of a rookie coming into training camp in his first year. So I'm hesitant to just rely on Dez Fitzpatrick being a huge part of this offense as they move forward into this year. But, an important part that I kind of scoffed at before this past year and then really started to do a deeper dive and appreciate it a little bit more. You lose Corey Davis, and he had a great year from a receiving standpoint this past year, and he's gone now to the Jets. But also what he brought to the table in terms of blocking in the running game and how important that is in this Titans offense, that's difficult to replace. Now, I think they feel good about Josh Reynolds and what he's going to bring to the table in that area too, based on some of the comments that they've had about Josh Reynolds. But I think this offense and the way it's set up, if you're a receiver and you're out there and you can't block, it's going to be difficult to get on the field in this offense for the Titans.
Corey Davis was a really good player. The only curse on Corey Davis was that he wasn't a number 1 receiver, and he was drafted to be one, and that's the way his contract was set up, and and his option year and all that, and it just the cost was just prohibitive, but. Corey Davis, you're right, was a very well-rounded player, a really good blocker, which you need on a team with Derrick Henry. And so, the Titans are going to be very judicious with who they go after because they need to bring in a guy, who's not afraid to block.
I'm just curious how Todd Downing feels right now, looking at the state of this offense. I mean, obviously – you're stepping into some pretty big shoes anyway, with Arthur Smith leaving to be the coach of the Falcons. This offense last year was awesome. Even when Taylor Lewan went down, you're talking about one of the top 5 offenses in the entire National Football League. So that's a pretty high bar if you're the Titans offense coming into this offseason. There's a lot of changeover on the team as a whole. You've lost Jonnu Smith. You've lost Corey Davis. You haven't really replaced Jonnu Smith yet at the tight end position. We'll see what happens on that front. The receiving room, I'm not impressed with the depth at this point. Like you said, I don't think the story is finished there either. But I just wonder, with Todd Downing stepping in as his first year as the offensive coordinator for the Titans in this offense, you get why that's the move that's made. And Vrabel's big on continuity, and I think that's been an important thing for him as he's made some of his decisions with his coaching staff. I just look at this offense right now, and it's difficult for me to imagine anyway, with everybody coming back and being healthy, like being a top 3, top 5 offense in the National Football League. That's a heck of a bar to begin with. That's a heck of a position to step into as a first-year offensive coordinator, knowing what just happened with the guy that left right before you.
And I feel like the Titans are sort of set up for regression this year. The only redeeming aspect of their situation is that they get to play Jacksonville and Houston, 4 times collectively. But beyond that, they were number 1 in the NFL in turnover ratio. They had an incredible record in one-score games. Everything broke right for them. And classically, that team usually takes a step back the next season. Plus, they've had incredibly great health from Tannehill and Henry the last 2 years. So you add all of that up together, and a lot of times nothing is forever. And, Todd Downing is stepping into a tough situation. Whenever your predecessor goes on to be a head coach, that a lot of times you've got nowhere to go but down. So it'll be interesting, to see how he does. And you keep hearing people, talk about, how bad Downing was in Oakland or whatever. And I never buy it because the NFL is a players' league. Most of the coaches are pretty good. And if you don't have good players, you're usually not going to get a good outcome. Downing's got a pretty good offense. They've got to fill some holes. But that offensive line is going to be healthier than a year ago. But they've got, to me, major questions at the slot and at tight end.
Well, and the slot part of this is interesting too because, look, I think they'll move A.J. Brown around some. We saw them do it at times last year as well. A.J. Brown can line up anywhere on the field if you need him to. And the other part about A.J. Brown to me that's interesting, Mark, is, we saw the video of him on Instagram Live after the season was over with last year where he's having the surgery and he's getting his knee scoped. And, it was pretty obvious towards the end of the season as well that there were some ankle issues that he was dealing with. It felt like he went down once or twice a game holding his ankle, and he found a way to get up and to play through it. So obviously he was playing through some stuff last year. If he's back and he's fully healthy, as productive as he was a season ago, I wonder if there's an even higher level to A.J. Brown's game yet that we just haven't seen.
Yeah, the only shame is that the Titans can't clone him. But beyond that, you're right. You're right. He's such an outlier for all the previous wide receivers that the Titans have drafted. He's been phenomenal. By the way, Tajay Sharp following Arthur Smith to Atlanta.
That was interesting. Apparently, Arthur Smith likes him some Tajay Sharp.
Yes.
There were some that floated it out there that maybe he comes back to the Titans. You add a little depth to the room that way. But I found that interesting. Arthur Smith snatching up Tajay Sharp going back to Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Apparently, he did like him.
Apparently so. When we come back, we will switch gears, get back into the Nashville Predators. Game 5 tonight for the Predators against the Hurricanes. That has not normally been a very kind game to the Predators. Does that mean anything heading into this stretch here? We'll discuss that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesale Link Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Mark is in for Joe today. Joe traveling back from Florida. He'll be back on the show tomorrow. Looking ahead to Game 5 tonight between the Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll be joined at 8:30 by Preds TV analyst, former Preds goaltender Chris Mason. Looking forward to that conversation coming up at 8:30. And Mark, Game 5s the last few years, really throughout the entire history of the Predators franchise, have not been very kind to the Predators. The Predators are 5-13 in Game 5s. And we talked about this to begin the show a little bit. The Predators, they've been down 0-2 in series before. They've never been down 0-3. They've never been swept in a series before. They found a way to battle back and at least win one, and multiple times they've won 2 to even things up at 2. And Game 5s traditionally after that have not gone well. Now, I think it's a pretty simple explanation, Mark, and the explanation that I have for that is it's just very difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row in the playoffs. Like that's what the Stanley Cup playoffs are. The margin for error is so small. It's very difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row in the playoffs. I don't think the fact that the Predators have struggled historically in Game 5s, especially in Game 5s after they've been down 0-2 in the series, I don't think that has any bearing whatsoever on this particular game or this particular series.
See, Robby, this is why you're a big star, a rising star on Nashville Morning Sports Talk Radio. Well, because that is exactly the way to look at this number. I don't think this team has anything to do with any of the previous Predators teams because most of the guys on this roster didn't play on those teams. So you're exactly right. There are a lot of crazy numbers that they pull out that to me have no relevance because they have nothing to do with the team this year, and this is one of them. But I agree with you. The task of beating a team 3 straight times is the problem here. And as we know with these series, there are adjustments, there are readjustments, and that's just how it is. And momentum ebbs and flows. And, Carolina has got a lot of things on their side tonight. Not only the home crowd and all that, but the knowledge that they could be ahead 3-1, and they're not. It's just, sometimes it's what you do with that information. So, yeah, you're right. I think this is going to be a tough game for the Preds to win. And in all honesty, the way that I see them winning this series, I think a lot of people are different. A lot of people think they can steal one tonight and go back to Nashville. I think realistically, forcing a Game 7, might be their stairway to heaven. But, who knows? But you're right. Game 5 is difficult for the visiting team for a lot of reasons, and you eloquently stated many of them.
Well, I just think when you look at this matchup in particular, Carolina, as you said earlier in the show, they've just got so much depth and so many options. A big question with them is, what's the status of Jacob Slavin heading into this game in Game 5? And we're going to have Sarah Sivian on from The Athletic to begin the 9 o'clock hour. That's been something that I don't feel like's been talked about enough in this series. Jacob Slavin, look, Carolina, they've got a lot of really good pieces on the back end. They've got one of the deepest defense cores in the entire National Hockey League. Dougie Hamilton's a really good player. Brett Pesce, as we found out in this series, a very good player as well. I think Jacob Slavin's their best guy, and he's not been playing for them as of late. I think that's been a big difference for the Predators, and they've been able to generate some quality looks with him not on the ice. Can he get back in there tonight? Is there going to be a point in this series where Jacob Slavin is available again for Carolina? To me, that's a pretty big question moving forward throughout the rest of this series because I think he is a gigantic difference maker for the Hurricanes.
One of the things, when I first started covering, the NFL and the NHL, Jeff Legwald, who was here for a while and covered the Titans and the Predators, told me, he said, listen, in most cases, you're always going to know more than the national guys. And Robby, think about the narrative coming into this series. Just about everybody around the NHL thought it was a mismatch. But those of us, I don't care, and not being a homer, but just looking at it objectively, we could see that the Predators, we saw going into this series was a lot different than the Predators team that couldn't beat any of the elite teams in their division this year. But I think Carolina drank the Kool-Aid for a little while with this, and I think it's really interesting how this series has gone from an apparent total mismatch to one where the underdog could pull the upset.
Well, I think it has too, and also, how does Carolina kind of handle this situation they're in? How do they handle the pressure that they're in right now? Because you think back to, they made a run to the Eastern Conference Final a couple of years ago, but when they did that, they're the underdog, they're the darling of the NHL, they're the team that nobody picked to get that far, and we've seen it here firsthand. I mean, it's one thing to kind of be the underdog and slide through and make a run that way. It's a completely different set of circumstances to handle the pressure of being a favorite. I don't care how many times that players and coaches, they try to tell you that, they don't pay attention to stuff like that and that's not a factor. I've seen enough hockey to know that is a factor, and I think that's influenced the Preds to some degree the last couple of years. But I'm really interested to see how Carolina handles this, because there are heavy expectations on this group. There are Stanley Cup expectations on this group heading into this playoff run, and that's a different beast to deal with when you're heading into a playoff run as favorites for the first time.
Still, we looked after game one and really after game two that Carolina's just better.
Yeah.
Carolina's better. Doesn't really matter who John Hines rolls out. And John kind of dueled, with Rexrode and with Adam Vingan after game two, that he felt like they played better than those guys did. And I'm not saying that those guys, didn't know what they were talking about. They were just differing perspectives. But it's interesting to me that after two games, everybody pretty much had the Predators buried, and now look at them.
Yeah, it's been a great story to see if they come back. And I wonder, too, like looking into Game 5, what translates that you found, that you discovered on home ice? What can you translate to Game 5 on the road? Like you would expect, you're going to keep that Duchesne, Forsberg, Johansson line together. Can they replicate what they did in Games 3 and in Game 4 as well? I thought Granlund's line on the road in the first couple of games, you're getting matched up against Aho's line. I thought they really struggled with that. They were not a threat whatsoever in the offensive zone, and they got exposed at times in the defensive zone as well. Like these are things, if you're John Hines and the Predators, you've got to find a better way to handle as you go back on the road now. And as I said, I mean, it's hard enough anyway to win 3 games in a row in the playoffs. I think you're going to see a pretty hungry Carolina team tonight in the first 10 minutes. And I think you said it best earlier in the show. To me, a lot of this game comes down to, can you survive? Like, can you just bear down and handle the first 10, 15 minutes of this game and hope things even out from a flow standpoint after that?
Sometimes, Robby, as you know, you play a team as much as the Preds played Carolina, and familiarity can cut both ways. And you wonder if Carolina looked at the Predators and went, we're going to win this series. And I'm not saying that that they totally let their guard down, but you wonder how much of that factors in to the fact that the Predators are now tied with them. Sort of an interesting psychological study, I guess. And that's been sort of the fascinating aspect to this postseason, that all these teams are very familiar with the other, almost overly familiar. Last night you saw Winnipeg complete a sweep of Edmonton in a 2-3 matchup in the Northern Division, and you've got a great series, the other series in the Preds division with Tampa Bay and Florida.
Yeah, I mean, familiarity, there's no question at this point. Everything tactically that you can know about a team, I mean, these two teams pretty much know that at this point. It's just about making the proper adjustments with your lineup. I think John Hines, to your point, I think he has outcoached Rod Brindamore so far in this series, which is amazing. I mean, I think back to the conversation that we were having on the show, and, after game 1 with the lineup the Predators went with, and, Matthew Olivier being in the game with Tanner Jeannot at the same time, and just the different decisions they made with going with Aaron Goodbranson on the back end as well. And to go from what we were talking about on our text line that day and, the belly aching about the lineup to now what we're talking about with John Hines, it's been a pretty quick transition in terms of the way we fans view John Hines so far in this series.
Yeah, I can say without fear of contradiction that I don't think we're going to see Branson the rest of the series.
I don't think so either.
Eric, enjoy the food, buddy.
Hope you enjoy the feud. Hope you enjoy the view from the press box. Should be fun the rest of the series. I don't think we're going to see him on the ice either. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Predators, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. How much confidence should we have in UC Saros that he can steal this series for the Predators? We'll get to that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. This week, purchase a $100 gift card for $50 of downtown dollars. Hundreds of downtown businesses are ready to welcome you back. And with this downtown dollars special promotion, it's never been easier to shop, sip, and snack local while supporting your favorite businesses. Get yours now at theGameNashville.com. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Looking ahead to Game 5 tonight between the Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. Pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Mark, let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Our buddy Ben texting in saying the Predators have to win this series. It's cup or bust since they kept the team together. Could be considered disappointing that it's tied 2-2 at this point. What's your reaction to Ben's take there that could be considered disappointing that it's 2-2 at this point against Carolina?
What do they say? Fan is short for fanatic. You certainly have the right to your opinion, but don't drink and text again. No, I'm just
we get some business from Ben on the text line every now and then.
I just don't see that. That's not my bar. I said it at the outset of the show, and I really feel this way. Even if they lose the next two games, I think Sean Henry and the Predators would tell you might need truth serum to get it out of them, but they would have felt like it was worthwhile for them not to trade at the deadline, getting those two games and sort of reconnecting with their fan base. The Preds have really written the book on that. And they do such a good job. Those games mean so much to those fans to be back there, to be together. And then the players, Matt Duchene said, he's been dying to play a playoff game in front of a full building at Bridgestone, and he finally got to experience it, and he got to be the hero. So I think the Preds would tell you that was worth it. You think about it now, and you wonder, what they're going to do with Ekholm. What are they going to do with Grantland? That they might bring Grantland back now, and trading him might not have meant that he was coming back next season. So we can play the what if game, but I think the Predators, at least in my opinion, have satisfied at least the minimum standards. For not being a seller at the trade deadline with their performance, not only down the stretch, but in this series.
Go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Austin from Nashville texting in. Robby, you made the point where it's difficult for a team to win 3 games in a row. While I agree, I think a point can be made that may not apply here. Had the last 2 been nice, decisive victories, I think it would apply, but 2 bounces the other way, this series is already over. I think the Preds are due for a nice, decisive victory in regulation. The Nedeljkovic Dam will break tonight. Austin confident on the Predators heading into Game 5 here, Mark.
Big difference between Austin and Ben on the text line.
I would say so. Pretty massive difference at this point. Joey from Gallatin texting in saying, I wholeheartedly believe Juice can steal this series. I say that because he seems to be breaking franchise records almost every game. He's doing what no other Predators goalie ever has. I think with the energy this team got during the youth resurgence, along with the way UC is playing, it could be enough to get us over the hump. What do you think of what Joey threw out there, that Saros is playing at a level that no other Predators goaltender ever has?
Well, Pekka Rinne in 2017 played at a pretty high level, especially those first 3 series and in games not in Pittsburgh. So I don't know about that, but it's fun to see the Predators, getting this kind of goaltending. Let's just say that, Juice and Pekka, play goal differently. I loved the scouting reports, by the way, from The Athletic. And, one of the scouts said, at the end of the day, UC Saros is a 6-foot goaltender, and a 6-foot goaltender is a 6-foot goaltender. Well, Dominic Hasek wasn't even 6 feet.
I was about to say.
Stopped everything, stopped shots with every body part that he ever had. There are, listen, horses for courses. And we've seen UC Saros, show his athleticism and, just just throwing the kitchen sink at Carolina and just making the spectacular save. So shut up when it comes to the 6-foot goaltender theory. Yes, it's not a plus all the time, but when you can do what Saros can do, I don't want to hear it.
Well, my favorite part of that is every time Saros gets beat over the shoulder, like, well, that's the book on Saros. They're going high over his shoulder, high over the glove there. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're trying to go high on every goaltender in the league. That's where you're trying to go. They
said the same thing when Pekka got beaten. When Pekka got beaten low stick side, that's what we heard too. So you're right.
It's just ridiculous to me. So UC Saros, I think, at this point is proven he's probably good enough to play goaltender at the NHL level, and 110 saves on 117 shots in the last 2 games for UC Saros. So the question is, what's your confidence level that Saros has enough left in the tank to steal this series for the Predators? Mark Howard, I ask you, as you look at the way this series has unfolded and the way that the Predators have played, how much confidence do you have that UC Saros can finish the job here and get this series done against Carolina?
Well, it's not so much that he's got to finish the job because he's up against it. And it wouldn't surprise any of us if the Predators, get outshot and outchanced, in the next 2 games or the next 3 games. But let's put it this way. Both goaltenders have been outstanding, but I think the Predators have had the edge in that area, and they've got a guy who can steal a series. I think we're all convinced now, and that was a question we were asking going into this postseason. UC Saros has played well in the regular season, but can he steal a series for the Predators, which is the next level for goaltenders in the NHL? And I think we come out of this with an emphatic yes. Unless he just totally, flops the next 2 games, I have no reason to believe that he couldn't pull it off.
Well, and at this point, Mark, I'm really interested to see what is UC Saros' contract going to look like. I mean, he's a restricted free agent this offseason. He's making $1.5 million per season right now. We know that's going to go up pretty dramatically. I don't know exactly what the dollar amount is going to look like, but we've talked a long time now about Saros signing a bridge contract or being a bridge goaltender for the Predators. And look, I don't know if they're going to give him a long-term deal or not, but based on the way he's played coming down the stretch here and so far in the playoffs, I'm very fascinated to see where this contract is going to end up, because if I'm his agent, each game that goes by, I mean, I'm just continuing to bring more and more negotiating power to the table when it comes to UC Saros and his next contract.
Yeah, well, and I've learned not to be a prisoner of the moment. And, I've learned that, I remember a certain center who came here, played well for a little while, and got a 6-year contract, which the Predators almost immediately regretted. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Saros, but the Predators seem to know who his successor is going to be. So I think David's not going to get, too crazy. Hey, unless Saros takes him to the final and maybe wins the cup, I don't think this is a huge thing. Yeah, I think he's going to get paid, but I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Stan texting in says, it's great to hear Mark Howard talking Preds on the radio. Go Preds. So Stan reaching out.
Oh, thank you.
Big fan of Mark Howard on the radio. We are a big fan of Mark Howard on the radio as well. We'll continue the conversation on the Predators when we come back. We'll be joined by Preds TV analyst, former Preds goaltender Chris Mason, to get his thoughts on the Predators heading into Game 5. That's coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And it is that time of the week here on Robby and Rexrode. Time to visit with our good friend Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, brought to you by Coleman Tractor and by Smoky Mountain Tops as well. Chris Mason joins us on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. C-Mace, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
What's up, guys? Not too much. Just getting ready for go time here tonight. I can't wait. I'm honestly cannot wait for tonight. It's crazy. They gotta find a way to win one down there, obviously. But what a story! What a couple games here at home.
What a couple games here at home, indeed. C-Mace, just from your vantage point, the response from the Predators in games 3 and 4, obviously a double overtime win in both games, so it took a little bit of extra time. But what did you think of the Predators' performance over the weekend, and what do you think they figured out or discovered in these last two games that they can build on heading into Game 5?
Well, I just think, as the games wore on, when you're playing Carolina, and they played hard, obviously, in Carolina, but to me, you thought, all right, well, Carolina's the top seed. You knew they were going to crank it up in the playoffs. Everyone's healthy. They're the better team. But, Game 2, I felt a little bit of a switch in terms of, the Predators improved. They kept it a little bit closer. There's points where it kind of could have went either way. But then when they got in home, the longer both of those games went, I started to see, the way the Predators were playing. They obviously a very resilient team. They've been through a lot this year, so they've been playing those types of games, for 2+ months. I felt they got better. The second halves of the games, they held on, in the first periods, especially the last game. I thought the first period they held on. Carolina just absolutely dominated them. But the longer these games go, the more it shifts into the Predators' favor, because I like what John Hines always says is who can play, that style of game longer and who can play it harder. And I think, Nashville has shown that as those games go on. And Carolina is relying so much on the back end on Pesce and Shea. Like, Pesce was dead tired when they started that overtime. He got stuck out there in that first overtime for, it was like 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes shift. And he was just keeled over. And, to start the second overtime, his first shift, I just wanted to keep an eye on him to see if that's going to, make an impact. You always say the lactic acid and all that kind of stuff. And he could barely move. And the Preds just kept going, the old Energizer Bunny. And they just wore him down. And the goaltending's been phenomenal. It could have been over about 3 or 4 different times. I think Nedeljkovic made some pretty big saves. And they were giving up that middle of the ice area more in the overtimes, too. So I thought Nashville, man, that's a team with a lot of resolve. I got to give them a lot of credit. I'm impressed by the character in that dressing room.
We're speaking, of course, to Predators TV analyst Chris Mason. And Mace, what about Saros? What is he doing that has made him look even better? He played well, of course, down the stretch. But what has impressed you about his play, especially the last 2 games, although he was pretty good the first 2?
Yeah, he was great, Mark. Great to talk to you, by the way. I miss you, buddy.
Me too.
He's we say this all the time, and that's why it's, you guys know as well as anybody, it's hard to go on social media sometimes because, at the beginning of the year, things weren't going so well, and we got to get rid of Saros, and Rene sucks, and Hines is gone, and all that, all this stuff, and that you just know it's a matter of time. And the last year, I think he took a huge step in, not only getting the experience to be the number 1 goalie. That was probably the first time, I think, in his career that he's, had that kind of workload. And then this year, it's been an epic run. It really has. And the consistency that he's played with over the length of the stretch, and you go into playoffs and you're he's almost perfect technically. He's almost robotic. And both goalies have played well. I got to give Nedeljkovic a lot of credit. I've been really impressed with him as well for a rookie to be in this situation. But Saros, again, like Carolina gets a little bit of momentum. Nashville has a breakdown. Carolina's going to get their chances. They've got an unbelievable team. But he's there in all those, pinnacle moments of the game when, you're down a goal and you're trying to come back against Carolina. They have the lead, and you break down and there's Saros. It's a breakaway or it's a broken player. It's deflected off of 2 guys and he's able to follow it. He's just, the old cliche. He's in the zone, but his ability to keep it there for long stretches. He played 10 periods. He played 10 periods in less than 3 days. and he was spectacular. And his best hockey, it's funny enough, it's it's when the game's on the line in overtime. He was just lights out. Just not enough. I don't have enough good things to say about how well he's playing.
In my opinion, John Hines has really almost been a genius at some of what he's done with his lineup and with his roster. The guts to take Johansson and Duchesne off the power play and having them respond. But Mace, what about the first two D pairings? I never in a million years, if you'd have told me that Carrier would be paired with Yossi and not because of injury, I think you were crazy. And why is Ellis playing so well with Matthias Ekholm?
Honestly, that's a great point, Mark. I really couldn't agree with you more because, first of all, the guts that it takes for John Hines. You're down 2 goals, and all right, it's not working. 95% of the coaches in this league, maybe even more, would have stuck with that power play setup. They might have made a minor tweak, with some of the guys that are maybe a little less stature than Johansson and Duchesne. And it sent a message to them. And the biggest thing about it is they've responded. They played, they put them with Forsberg, and they've been the best line on either team in both games, arguably. And the power play, it was killing them. It was absolutely killed them in the first 2 games. They gave up, a shorthand goal. They gave up, I don't know how many chances. They got out-chanced on their own power play. It seemed like 1,000-1. And so Hines makes that move. And what happens? You get Johansson's best game. Forsberg, I thought he was playing well to start the series, but he continues to play. And then Matt Duchene's played the best we've seen all year. And then the power play. It's getting chances. It's getting you momentum. It changed the complexion of the way those games went because of that, because it was killing. That was their Achilles heel in the first 2 games, in my opinion. They couldn't get anything going, no momentum. They gave up chances. And then to your deep pairing question, Alex Carrier has been, I've heard this about him in Milwaukee for many years. But when a kid gets called up and you get 1 game, someone's hurt or whatever the situation, you get 1 game, it's just not enough time. You got to get all that. You got to understand the league. You have to have time here to really see what a player can do. And I'll tell you what, he's here to stay. This kid is, him and Roman, their skating ability, their hockey IQ, the way that he reads the game, he'll get in the play. Like Roman, we know how active Roman is offensively. He'll get in the zone and he'll be buzzing around. And all of a sudden you'll see Carrier come down. And now because the forwards are so disciplined defensively, that allows these guys to really, get involved and kind of change the look offensively. And the same thing, it doesn't compromise his defensive play. And then Ellis and Ekholm, they've played together before. But I think for some reason against this team, those pairings just really go together because Ellis isn't a big guy, but he plays, a gritty type of a hockey game. And Ekholm's may have the big, may have the bigger guy that's going to clear out the net front. But Ellis has been, the way that he puts his body on the line and he's playing defensively, just cutting off some of these rushes and stopping some of their cycles in zone. You've got those 2 pairs. And then I thought Benning and Harper, you got to give them a lot of credit too because, they're the last ones we talk about, but they're out there on the penalty kill. They're out there in the defensive situations, and they're battling their butts off. And it's everybody. It's everybody's contributing, and that's why they won.
Preds TV analyst Chris Mason on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. C-Mace, last thing for you here. As you look at this matchup for the Predators heading into Game 5, they've won 2 games in a row. You know how hard it is to win 3 times in a row against a team in the playoffs, much less going back on the road to do so as well. What's the key to a win tonight in Game 5 for the Predators to have an opportunity to come back home and try to close this thing out in Game 6, in your opinion?
Well, I think the key, especially at home, I feel it's been there's just been so many special teams. I feel the less of that, the better it is for the Preds. And to me is the start. I felt they didn't really establish their type of game 5-on-5. There wasn't much 5-on-5 play, so maybe that had a lot to do with it. But if they can get, to that physical game, and I got to give Carolina credit too, they've matched that fairly well. Although I think the edge to that style of play goes to the Predators. But the one thing that I don't think Nashville was able to do well was establish offensive zone time in Carolina, just because they were able to break the puck out so easy and I thought they had a little easier time kind of playing the speed game that Carolina wants to play. So if Nashville can, the old, we try to say this for the series key, get them in the trenches and play that kind of street fight kind of game and no time and space and all those types of things. And they've been winning the battles at both net fronts, especially here in Nashville. To me, that's the key.
Well, C-Mace, it's certainly going to be fun. Game 5 tonight at 7 o'clock. You can watch C-Mace on Bally Sports alongside our very own Willie Donick as well. C-Mace, appreciate you taking time to join us today.
Okay, thank you, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Mace.
Absolutely. Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, brought to you by Coleman Tractor and by Smoky Mountain Tops as well here on Robby and Rexrode. Mark, when we come back, it's time for the legendary competition known as Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025 to guess the goal scorer for the Predators against the Hurricanes tonight in Game 5. If you get it right, you'll win a prize pack brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. We'll do that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game.
shot, and the score!
Who's going to find the back of the net in tonight's Preds game? Robby and Rexrode make their picks to click and welcome a listener to do the same. Pick to Click is brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, the official vodka of the NHL.
And it is that time of the day, time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. The Predators taking on the Carolina Hurricanes tonight in Game 5 of the first round. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And we've had a shift in the standings heading into Preds Pick to Click today. Joe Rexrode is atop the leaderboard with 8 correct picks this year. The listeners now at 7, so some work to do from the listeners. They were tied, deadlocked with Rexrode at 7 for what felt like an eternity. Rexrode breaks through on Friday with a correct guess and takes the lead in the competition. The listeners at 7. Ryan Porth remains at 5 correct answers. Robbie Stanley continues his embarrassing performance. I did get one right Friday, and I'm now up to 3 on the season, so still holding down the fort in last place. So lots of work left to accomplish today here on Preds Pick to Click. And with that in mind, let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Josiah from Nashville, who is today's participant in Preds Pick to Click. Josiah, what's going on? Thanks for calling in.
Not much, man. Just heading into work. Thought I'd give it a shot.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to join us today. So, Josiah, your pick to click for tonight in the Predators in Game 5 against Carolina. Who scores for the Predators tonight?
I'm going to choose the obvious one. He always turns it on in the playoffs, Philip Forsberg.
Philip Forsberg, the selection by Josiah. That's probably a pretty good guess. Josiah, I appreciate you taking time to join us today.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Absolutely. So, Josiah in Nashville selecting Philip Forsberg. Now, we do have an addition today to Preds Pick to Click. Mark Howard on the show with us today. So, Mark Howard, you get the honorary first pick today among the 3 of us here on the program. Your inaugural edition. Is this your first pick to click?
I believe so, yes.
Oh,
I'm quite nervous
this is
over
a big
it.
moment. This is a big moment in the history of the show. So without further ado, Mark Howard, Philip Forsberg is off the board. Your pick to click for the Predators in tonight's game in Game 5 against Carolina is who?
Matthias Ekholm.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Coming immediately off the top rope.
Matty
Mark
Ek.
Howard, ladies and gentlemen. I like it. Matthias Ekholm selected by Mark Howard. He's been playing pretty well as of late, on a pairing with Ryan Ellis as well. So Mark Howard selecting Matthias Ekholm in the competition. Ryan Porth, you are up next. Your pick to click tonight for the Predators against the Hurricanes in Game 5.
Man, this is tough. This is tough.
That's not an option.
Yeah, I can't write down "this is tough" as my goal scorer. Give me the captain, Roman Josi.
Oh, wow. So 2 defensemen off the board.
That
Mark
is correct.
Howard going with Matthias Ekholm. Ryan Porth going with Roman Josi in this competition.
Hard to go with the Grantland line because they didn't play well in either game. To start the series in Carolina. Yeah, the first line is too obvious, so that's why I went blue line.
So Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm, and Roman Josi off the board. I am up next in the competition. And, Mark, you've left it open for me to do this, and this is a perfect example of somebody being prisoner of the moment and being caught up. But I'm going to do it anyway. Give me Matt Duchene in the competition today. I like the way that he's played. I like the way that that line as a whole is played. I would pick Ryan Johansson, but he scored 2 games in a row, and I don't think he's going to score 3 games in a row. So give me Matt Duchene in this competition right now.
Yeah, I feel like flying down to Raleigh and telling Duchene – you're allowed to play well in the next few games.
Yes.
So let's not rest on our laurels and just keep it up.
So apparently, Porth, Joe Rexrode, this competition means so much to him that on his day off, he has texted in some picks. So are there any picks remaining that Joe Rexrode can select that we've not already grabbed up?
I mean, there are no days off, so this isn't technically a day off for Joe Rexrode. In the order that he sent, he wanted Forsberg first, off the board. He wanted Duchene second,
gone,
off the board. So he's going with Luke Cunnin.
Oh, yeah. The hero from Game 4, Luke Cunnin. 2 goals in Game 4. Rexrode going with Luke Cunnin. So has he just totally abandoned Jodavion Rexcroke at this point? No more love for Calle Yarncroke anymore.
So Jodavion Rexcroke was not within his top 4. And at the bottom, he says, sorry, Rexcroke.
Okay, so at least he's cognizant of his disrespect to Calle Yarncroke in this competition. That's
correct.
Good to know.
Correct.
Good to know at this point. So that is today's edition of Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Our caller, Josiah, selecting Philip Forsberg in the competition. Mark Howard, his inaugural Preds Pick to Click selection belonging to Matthias Ekholm. Ryan Porth going with the captain, Roman Josi. Robbie Stanley selecting Matt Duchene, probably cursing Matt Duchene before the Game 5 even starts tonight in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Joe Rexrode rounding us out with Luke Cunnin, the hero from Game 4 as well. So, gentlemen, good luck today in the competition. Mark Howard, how do you feel after your inaugural edition of Preds Pick to Click?
I feel like I've checked another item off my bucket list.
Yes. I'm sure you do. I'm sure this has been something that you've been waiting to do for a long time. So we'll see if the Predators can respond tonight in Game 5. What do we think, Mark Howard, of Barry Trotz and the New York Islanders? Those sneaky Islanders all of a sudden up 3-2 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's been a great series so far between the Islanders and the Penguins. And Barry Trotz, don't look now, on the verge of sending Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin home.
Yeah, in the face of a couple of really devastating injuries. The great thing about Trotzy is he circles the wagons about as well as anybody. And, now we, at least I call him, future Hall of Famer Barry Trotz. And we're seeing it again. Working for a guy, Lou Lamoriello, who, believe me, fires coaches at the drop of a hat. And he and Trotzy have gotten along really well. Trotzy doesn't sweat the small stuff. But Pittsburgh, not really as good in goal as they have been in years past, or really, on the blue line. But still, they were favored to beat an Islanders team. Islanders over the last 20 games of the regular season, guys, were the worst offensive team in the league. Yep. And yet, they have found a way to get a second wind in the playoffs, and a lot of it has to do with that diminutive man behind the bench.
By the way, Tristan Jarry last night, the turnover that led to the double overtime goal for the Islanders, looked like he had never played goalie before.
It happens.
Not only making the turnover, but then trying to skate back into the crease. It looked like he didn't know what to do.
It was bad.
It was horrible.
It was not good. And look, that goes to show you the importance of goaltending. Look no further than the Edmonton Oilers. Mark, to your point earlier, you've got Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and albeit those two guys were shut out in the first 2 games of this series, they were a little bit more active in the last 2 games. They blow a 4-1 lead in Game 3, lose in overtime. And here you are. You've got probably the 2 best scorers in the entire National Hockey League on your team, and you're swept in the first round. That shows you just how important goaltending can be in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable to see that happen. And then all of a sudden you look around as well. Peter Laviolette already out of the first round of the playoffs. Boston gets that done. Florida stays alive last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Spencer Knight coming in net. So there will be a Game 6 between the Lightning and the Panthers as well. So things starting to heat up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's go back to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Taylor from Fort Campbell texting in, says, what if we made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final and Robbie got every pick to click right and everyone else got it wrong for the rest of the season?
Be a great rally.
Well, that's probably at this point what it would take for me to win this competition. It would be a rally of maybe almost biblical proportions.
I mean, that would be a bigger rally for you to win pick to click than it was for the Preds to make the playoffs. I mean, your percentage chance of winning pick to click is less than 0.34%, which was the Preds playoff odds.
I would say so.
Back in mid-March.
It's probably at 0.001 at this point. Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, great job, Mark Howard. You described the Preds season so far to a T. This is great for the fan connection, making the playoffs and winning these 2 games.
No doubt. I'm excited for the fans. the chance to get back in there, and it's such a mutual love fest. You know, players love the fans, fans love the players, fans love the fans. I mean, it's cool to walk around there because so many of those season ticket holders have been around for years, and just to see them back, and I think they've been waiting the whole year for this. And I maintain that was a big part of the Predators' decision not to be sellers at the trade deadline because they were hoping for situations such as games 3 and 4, and they got it big time. And they'll get another chance, maybe a clincher. So all of this has been great.
When we come back, we will be joined by Sarah Sivian from The Athletic. She covers the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll look ahead to Game 5 with her and ask the question, are we going to see Jacob Slavin back at any point in this series for the Hurricanes? That's coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porter with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe Rexrode traveling back from Florida today, so he's got the day off. He'll be back tomorrow. And looking ahead tonight to Game 5 between the Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes. And to help us do that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and bring in the great Sarah Sivian from The Athletic. Sarah, what's going on? Thanks for taking time to join us today.
She literally just dropped off.
Okay. We'll try to reconnect with Sarah and get her back on the line here. But looking forward to getting her perspective. This is a pretty interesting game tonight for Carolina in Game 5. They've dropped 2 winnable games here in Nashville. You're back at home as the top seed. Pressure could be on them tonight, Mark Howard. I'm interested to see how they deal with that.
I would agree with you. I think that this series has become a lot more difficult than they anticipated. The way that they swept to the number 1 seed, I think they felt like they could roll through the first round, and they have been rudely reminded that it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, they have for sure. So we'll effort to get Sarah back on the line and get her thoughts on this. A big part of this too, Mark. And we do have Sarah back on hold. So we'll go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Sarah Sivian from The Athletic. Sarah, thanks for taking time to join us this morning. We appreciate it.
Speaking of things that aren't easy, I guess the call failed, but we're back. We're back. How are you?
Hey, we're powering through. We're doing great. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. So, Sarah, I'm going to start by asking you a very stupid and simple question, and that is simply this. How much have the Hurricanes missed Jacob Slavin? How big of a difference has that made in the last couple of games? And do you anticipate him being back at any point in this series?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, you take it for granted until you see how people play around him. He makes everybody around him better, and you kind of see that with Dougie Hamilton. Like, I'm not going to say he's having a terrible series, but I'm saying that he's struggling a little bit defensively, and you see that on the goals allowed. I mean, I don't want to take any credit away from Saros. He's been the talk of maybe the first round. I don't know, there's a lot of topics of discussion of the first round in general, but he's up there. But I think if you look at the shot selection, the Predators are getting in the slot a little bit too much, and Slavin would have been all over that. I'm not sure if he's going to be back, but it's his decision to make. I don't know if he's even sure yet.
So, Sarah, as you look at this game for Carolina, obviously, I mean, you look at Game 4, and at one point, I mean, they're out shooting the Predators 2-1 in that game, and obviously the Predators dig deep. They find a way to get it done in double overtime. But as you transition back home as the favorite in this series, if you're Carolina, how big is this Game 5? Is this approaching must-win territory for Carolina in Game 5?
Oh, did you read my article? Yes, that's basically what I
sure
said.
did.
I do think you got to win this one at home. Obviously, with the way this series is going, everybody's winning at home, and you got to, even if they end up winning in 7, if it takes 7, I still don't feel great about it if they lose this one at home, just because it's like they were the favorite like heavily, and I understand the Preds got hot late, and that is dangerous in itself. I've been saying like don't sleep on them the whole time, but at the same time, it seems like they remind me of the Canes from 2 years ago, kind of where like they will take this amount of heat and run with it, and they could win it. Like if they have come this far already, you know what I mean?
Sarah,
Sure.
In your mind, do you think Rod Brindamore regrets criticizing the officiating, or do you think it got the desired effect?
Yes, it definitely got the desired effect. I mean, I don't know if the officials are taking weight in what he said, but I do think that Game 4 was great. I had no problems with Game 4's officiating. I thought my whole issue the whole time was just kind of like the stoppages, and it was just approaching unwatchable. Like, I'm not going to say the refs are biased or like against any team. I do think like Nashville got the advantage on that just because of the nature of the game, but I think that they evened it out for Game 4, and I don't think Brindamore regrets that at all. I think he is going to speak his mind regardless of anything.
You talked about the narrative coming in that a lot of people thought that this series would be one-sided, that the Canes would win in 4 or 5 games. In your mind, what changed
Well, there's Slavin. There's also the I mean, I don't think anybody who said this would be done in 4 games was giving the Predators enough credit. I mean, you see the way Saros came in and just was one of the best goaltenders in the league, if not the best, for that run. Like, you knew this was trouble, and like they just got hot at the right time, and that is indicative of a team that can do something serious in the playoffs. So I don't know if anything inherently changed, but I think that people's opinions about it were wrong to begin with. But I do think the Canes can't let these like little things slip away from them, right? Because the Predators are capitalizing and finding ways to win on mistakes that are just happening after like the Canes are winning in Corsi and stuff. And I feel like they just can't take that little breath. Like, the Predators are just on top of them.
Sarah Sivian from The Athletic on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And Sarah, I remember watching Rod Brind'Amour as a player and just the competitiveness, the fire that he shows. I mean, Jordan Martinook the other day talking about, if they were literally in a war, he would be the first one to jump over the bunker. How much do you think that Carolina has taken on his personality as the head coach, and how well do you think that could serve them now as they head into a massive game tonight in Game 5?
Yeah, it's everything. I think if you look at the way they play, it's just like how Brind'Amour played. It's like a microism of how Brind'Amour played. Like, he obviously was one of the best two-way players of all time, in my opinion, and I think you look at the shots allowed versus shots taken ratio that the Hurricanes have every year since he's been the coach, and it's clear like that has Rod Brind'Amour's paw prints all over it, and kind of the way they're staying calm instead of, I guess, freaking out or lashing out right now. I think this game will show his impact on the franchise, I think.
And Sarah, last thing for you here, as you look ahead to this matchup here in Game 5, you mentioned him, and UC Saros has been awesome to this point. Nedeljkovic, I thought, was awesome, made some huge saves in Game 4 as well. What do you anticipate the goaltending to look like? Because we knew coming into this series, maybe there was a chance that Peter Mrazek could be seen at some point. Do you anticipate that being a chance at all, given the way that Nedeljkovic has played so far through 4 games as they move forward here?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I thought with Nedeljkovic just because he has played so well. And, yeah, it's like this kind of the same situation with Saros, I guess, when he started getting hot. But I think, I don't know, there's no reason to take him out, right? Like, nothing was his fault. He had that second goal allowed that he definitely liked to get back. But other than that, he was, like, making up for a lot of the Hurricanes' defensive lapses in Game 4. So I feel like you can't really take him out. I guess you can, but I guess we'll see. I don't anticipate them taking him out, but I don't know.
Sarah Sivian from The Athletic has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Does a great job covering the Carolina Hurricanes. Sarah, appreciate you taking time to join us this morning, and it's going to be a fun one tonight in Game 5. Appreciate you taking time this morning.
Anytime. Buckle up, guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Sarah Sivian from The Athletic, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. And Joe, we've seen that kind of floated out there, or excuse me, not Joe. Joe's not here today. Mark, we've seen that floated out there a few times before as well in terms of what the goaltending could look like for Carolina in this series. I anticipated at some point, if Nedeljkovic struggled early on, that Brind'Amour would have a pretty quick hook to go with Peter Mrazek. Based on the way he's played so far, I think this is going to be Nedeljkovic's series at this point, for better or for worse, as they go down the stretch here.
Yeah, she had the same take as we did, that there's really no good reason to change goaltenders except that you might want to, maybe change momentum. But I think that's a dangerous thing, and I think they're going to stay with Nedeljkovic and maybe make some other lineup tweaks.
When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Predators and the Hurricanes, looking ahead to Game 5. How much pressure is on Carolina, and how do we think they handle that pressure as a favorite in this series? We'll get to that coming up next. Also, a lot of your thoughts to get to as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Hey, Smashville, the game Nashville, and Dos Equis is bringing the party to you. Text the word GOLDEN to 615-737-1025. That's GOLDEN to 615-737-1025 to qualify for the ultimate in-home watch party. And did I mention one lucky fan is getting tickets to a playoff game at Bridgestone Arena? Get a dose, Nashville. You must be 21 or older to enter and win. Enjoy Dos Equis responsibly. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Thanks to Sarah Sivian for The Athletic for joining us in the last segment. She does a great job covering the Carolina Hurricanes. And, Mark, it's interesting. Like, look, he's not Roman Josi, and it's unfair to compare him to Roman Josi. Roman Josi is a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. But Jacob Slavin is an absolute stud. He is hugely important to what Carolina does. And not having him the last couple of games is a big deal. The last 3 games for the Predators, or for Carolina, not having him in this series has been a big deal. And as Sarah pointed out in the last segment, there have been some slot chances the Predators have been able to get, which they deserve credit for, that you wonder how much of a difference would it make if Slavin is in the lineup. That's going to be a big question to me as this series moves forward here. Can Slavin get back in there? Is he healthy enough at any point to come back in and contribute? Because that so far has proven to be a gigantic loss for Carolina in this series.
Yeah, if Bill Raftery did hockey, he'd say the Predators are getting to the net with impunity, and part of that is because Slavin hasn't been there, and he does lend a physical element and cleans up the messes in front of the net, for the Hurricane. But I'm not going to feel sorry for the Hurricane. They've still got a really good team, a really deep roster. Everybody has to deal with injuries to some degree. So I'll hold the pity party for the summer if they don't win the Cup.
I think so, too. And, look, there's no question about it. Carolina, they are a very deep team. They've been great from start to finish this year. And, look, you're in a situation right now, and Sarah Sivian pointed this out on a piece she wrote for The Athletic. You're approaching must-win territory, in her opinion, for the Carolina Hurricanes. UC Saros has been awesome. He's made 110 saves on 117 shots in the last 2 games. So he's playing extremely well. And we talked about it earlier in the show, Mark. I mean, Carolina made an awesome run to the Eastern Conference Final a couple of years ago. They were the darling of the NHL. Nobody picked them to get to the Eastern Conference Final, and they were able to just plow their way through the playoffs and then got taken down by Boston. Got beat again by Boston last year, where the Bruins were absolutely the favorite heading into that series. This is really the first time that this group in Carolina has had to handle these expectations and the pressure that goes along with being a top seed in the playoffs. Do you think that gets overblown when we talk about this going into the playoffs and in the NHL, or do you think that's a real thing that teams have to figure out how to deal with as they try to navigate their way through the playoffs?
I think you absolutely clocked it, Robby, because think about their respective seasons. Carolina was vying for that number 1 seed, and that's a big deal. But they knew they were in the playoffs. The Predators have been living on the edge for the last 3 months. So they're comfortable in this. I remember, back when Barry Trotz was coaching the Predators and they got into the playoffs, and one of the things that one of the GMs said about the Preds is that they are comfortable in being in close games. They are comfortable in being in those situations. And I think that definitely has held true in this series. So they are no strangers to being in must-win territory. In fact, they've been pretty much paying a mortgage from must-win territory the last few months, where Carolina was living a totally different existence, and now all of a sudden, thrust into must-win territory. Those heavily favored teams sometimes don't react the way you think.
Ryan Porth, as you look at this situation for Carolina in this series, as I said, this is really the first time they're dealing with something like this, being the overwhelming favorite heading into a series. We've seen teams in the NHL respond very differently to this. Some teams, it doesn't seem to affect them at all, and they just continue to mow right along and play well. Some teams start to fold a little bit as series go on and as pressure builds. The one thing that I think Carolina really has going for them is I really like their head coach. Like I really like Rod Brindamore. I think he's been really good for this team, and he has handled them about as well as you can handle a team in a year like this. I think he's going to win the Jack Adams Award. I think he deserves to win the Jack Adams Award. So I feel good from that standpoint if you're Carolina having him at the helm. But Porth, I am very interested to see how they handle being in a pressure-cooked situation like this, heading back home with the series tied 2-2.
Yes, I think Brindamore's experience back in the 06 run with the Carolina Hurricanes is something that he can really, let trickle down to his current captain with Jordan Staal. Jordan Staal has been through a lot of the playoff grind in his career, most notably with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, I mean, they've got some experience in that locker room and in that coach's room that can help them in situations like this. But how does a Svechnikov respond to the pressure? How does Sebastian Aho respond to the pressure? How does a Brett Pesce respond to the pressure? This is a situation that a lot of players, young players in that locker room, have not experienced in terms of having a bullseye on their back instead of being the darling underdog that the Preds are trying to be in this series and try to pull the upset. So, this was pretty much the number one burning question that I had for this Canes team coming into the series, which was if the Preds put pressure on them, how are they going to respond? And I think tonight is going to tell us a lot about that.
Let's go back to our 1025 The Game text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. John from Kentucky texting in saying, has Juice's play this season and in the playoffs changed the franchise's goalie plans down the road? You just used a first-round pick on a goalie, and Connor Ingram is also in the system. Mark Howard, I ask you, as the way that Saros has played down the stretch and so far in this series against Carolina, has that changed the way you think the Predators view their goaltending situation as they kind of forecast what the future of that position could look like?
No. No, it doesn't. Right now, UC Saros is the starting goaltender, and really there's a window for him to be the starting goaltender for the next 2 or 3 years or longer. You continue to develop your other goaltenders. Askarov is just, by any measure, is viewed as the number one goaltending prospect, who's not playing in the NHL right now. We don't know about Connor Ingram. Connor Ingram, I've heard, everything from he's pretty good or he'd be a pretty good backup. And we don't know what's going on with Connor Ingram's life. He's got problems beyond the ice. So, enjoy UC Saros. Don't worry about the other goaltenders because I don't really think that's going to affect David Poyle's decision.
Go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ben texting in, what should Hines do during the game tonight if the lineup changes that he made in games 3 and 4 don't work? Do you think that Hines has a quick trigger tonight if things aren't going well in the first period and a half in this game? How long do you think John Hines waits to shuffle things up? We saw it with Peter Laviolette. Sometimes, it was a shuffle machine in the first period of a game. If you don't get immediate results, they were shuffling lines all the time. How quick do you think John Hines could be to make some changes tonight if the lineup doesn't work early in the game?
I don't think that there's a set timetable. I think you give these lines a few shifts. If he doesn't like the way it's going with one, maybe he changes him. I think it just depends on the flow of the game.
I think it does too. And look, speaking of flow of the game, and Sarah brought this up too, the officiating in this series, that was a big topic of conversation heading into Game 4. Rod Brindamore made those comments to the media talking about how he feels like the team was fighting the refs. I absolutely felt like that influenced the way that the game was officiated to start the game. I think that wore off a bit, especially into overtime. You get to the point most of the time, Mark, in overtime, and you know this, where you've almost got to commit like a literal crime out there on the ice for anything to get called in the overtime period. So I thought that settled down a bit as the game went on, but there's no question about it. The first 2 games in Carolina, it was a penalty fest to the box. I'm interested to see now that we're deeper into the series and that you're in Game 5, I would hope there's a little bit more 5-on-5 action tonight in Game 5. And I'm interested to see if the Predators can find their way earlier in Game 5 than they did. Game 2 is so hard to really sit here and judge what they did 5-on-5 because they had 14 minutes of power play time and they couldn't get anything going. I would expect, just as this series continues to get deeper and deeper, that special teams, at least the amount of attempts that you get on the power play, that's going to continue to go down.
Yeah, the stoppages were more annoying than anything else. If there are penalties, there are penalties. Yeah. But, I agree with her that I don't want to say unwatchable, but definitely annoying.
This coming from Michael Smith, who works for the Carolina Hurricanes, covers them for the Hurricanes website. Jacob Slavin is on the ice for the Hurricanes at morning skate. So we'll see if that means he's in the lineup or if it doesn't tonight for the Hurricanes against the Predators. But Jacob Slavin is on the ice at morning skate for the Hurricanes. When we come back, we'll get back into one of the stories of games 3 and 4, the emergence of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. Can they keep that going heading into game 5 tonight? And if they do, what does that mean for the Predators in this series? We'll get to all that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Talking Predators, looking ahead to Game 5 for the Predators tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And Mark, one of the stories of the weekend for the Predators in Games 3 and 4 were the play of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. Now, we know this. The production based on the salary that they're paid, it's been nowhere near good enough. I don't think anybody could argue that at this point. I don't think Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene could argue that at this point based on the production that they've had and the salaries that they're paid. But I thought Games 3 and Game 4 were a pretty nice reminder of what they can be, and that leaves fans a lot of times asking, all right, well, we see what you can be. Where is this more often? Why is this not the case more often with these two players specifically? Mark, from the big picture perspective, what do you think the perception is right now of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene in the Predators fan base? And now that they're together on a line and the last two games, they've looked really good together, how much do you think they can repair that image if you think it's broken at this point with the Predators fan base?
Well, it's going to take more than 2 games.
For sure.
For starters. Well, let's see what they do the rest of this series. If they don't play well in the next game or so, we'll just shrug our collective shoulders and say, yeah, we've been there and done that. I think we all know that both of these guys are maddeningly, inconsistent. But we're seeing the best version of themselves the last 2 games, and hopefully that'll continue tonight.
And it's interesting because Arvidsson goes out. He's not a part of the lineup the last couple of games. Duchene moves up to that top line. And so much of the conversation has been about Johansson and Duchene. I thought Forsberg looked very good. Again, he's going to be a driving force. I think you know what you've got in Philip Forsberg at this point. But Ryan Johansson, Mark, to me, when he's playing his game, he's just so physical. And I thought that was really what stood out to me this weekend from Johansson. He was engaged physically. He was throwing people out of the way on the wall, fighting for the pucks. I mean, I think about the goal he scores from the slot in Game 4 where he's along the boards on the battle. He's throwing people aside. He just fights his way to the front of the net and gets the backhand goal. As Sarah Sivian said, probably a play there that Nedeljkovic wants back and wants to cover up that puck. But just a tenacious effort by Johansson to get to the front of the net. And look, I think, and we get this all the time from fans on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com talking about the effort or lack thereof for Ryan Johansson. I don't buy into that as much as some other people do. Like, there's a certain degree of effort that's required just to be on the ice on a nightly basis and not get killed in an NHL hockey game. So I don't think that Johansson's just out there constantly dogging it, but there's no way to deny at this point that he takes his game to a new level in the playoffs. The numbers bear that out. Every statistical measure that you want to throw out there bears that out in the playoffs. And that leaves you shaking your head and asking your question, I mean, where is this more often during the regular season?
No, I agree with you, Robby. And the problem with Matt Duchene is I think he has a tendency to coast. He's so good that he doesn't. What he shows you out there is acceptable. But you're right. When you see the power and the speed that he has, and he's got great hands on top of it, you realize how gifted he is and why he's had some great seasons in his career. And you wonder why he can't do that every night. My perception of Forsberg is a little bit different now. I just think that huge season is probably never going to come. That Phil is going to give us some great nights. He's been a streaky player his whole career. He can't stay healthy. And durability, in my opinion, is a big thing. And I don't think, he's dogging it at all out there. I just think that, we might have seen the best of Philip Forsberg, but that doesn't mean he can't be productive. But I think Duchene, and this is just my opinion, when he wants to be, is in a totally different class. I mean, Duchene could be an elite player if he really wanted to. I just don't know, if he's got that passion. You look, at some of the top players in this league and realize, you look at Connor McDavid and the effort level that he plays at, Sidney Crosby and guys like that, and maybe Duchesne isn't at their level, but I think that, if he really busted it, if he had their motor or motors, I think he would be at least a point-a-game player. I mean, in my opinion, that's what he should be.
Well, and to that point, I mean, they brought him in here, and it's funny that we're talking about this now, but they brought him in here to be a centerman, and here we are. We're talking about him playing on the wing on that top line with Forsberg and Johansson. Now, to your point earlier in the show, I mean, I don't think it's a huge surprise that at some point he ends up on a line with Forsberg and Johansson. They're your three best forwards. They're your three highest paid forwards, and you're coming in. If you need to make a difference, those are your three guys that you're looking to if you're John Hines and the Nashville Predators. So I'm not saying that it's a surprise that they've ended up going this direction. Now, we have had some fans say, what are you giving love to John Hines for? They should have put this combination together sooner, and I don't necessarily buy into that. I mean, Matt Duchene, at one point this year, I was questioning whether or not he was going to be in the lineup as they move forward here based on the production just wasn't there. The way this team was playing without him, he comes back in, still struggling to find some production, still struggling to put up points. So I don't think that it was ever as simple as, hey, you need to put Matt Duchene with Ryan Johansson and Philip Forsberg, and this is what the Predators should be doing the whole time.
Well, and the other aspect to this is, what and who is Victor Arvidsson now and moving forward? Is Arvidsson just a diminished player that maybe they signed a long-term contract too soon to? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. This year, we saw flashes of the old Arvy, but he can't stay healthy. He's gotten banged up. And in a series like this against a team, like Carolina, he would seem to have a hard time. So I think this is a good series to put Duchene up with Forsberg and Johansson, but that might not always be the case.
Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Got a texter that says, I think the Preds win this series if Duchene and Johansson continue to play the way that they are. Mark, is it as simple as that to you? Is it if Johansson and Duchene bring you and give you the same level that we've seen out of them the last couple of games, do the Predators win this series?
Well, I think it's near the top of the checklist. They need their big guns. I think we know that. But the other thing is, they need Saros playing at the level that he's been playing. So, that there are a few things that have to happen for the Predators to pull this upset.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Jim from Nolensville, who wants to weigh in. Jim, thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Yeah, thanks for the great coverage on the station. And Mark, good to hear your voice again. Of course, I listened to you for years, but on Duchene, I've been watching him since he came here, and I think that he does give a complete effort. He's a better skater, of course, than Johansson, and I don't think that you can mark him down for maybe not trying to be an elite player. Now, he told us last year he was before the bubble that he had some mouth troubles, and he didn't get good diagnosis up there, but he still played. But when I see him skate and he's around the net and everything, I just think that he has fulfilled his contract, and he is always out there trying. So, I just think that he has done that.
Thanks for the call, Jim. We appreciate it. I don't know that there's any way you could say he's fulfilled his contract. No. I mean, I hear what Jim's saying. He skates well. The speed is obvious. When Matt Duchene is on his game, that's his game. He plays a speed game. He moves really well. And in terms of skating ability, he is right up there with the elite guys in the league. Like, nobody's in the same class of Connor McDavid when it comes to skating and the ability that he has. But Matt Duchene's a very, very gifted skater in his own right.
No, absolutely.
But they're going to be better moving forward. if you're going to justify that contract.
Yeah, and Jim has the right to his opinion, but it's a bottom line business. And in my opinion, when you're getting paid $8 million a year, you got to produce. And you don't get a cookie, just for putting out a good effort. We want to see results. And I understand that that there were some mitigating circumstances for Duchesne, but still, the numbers haven't been there. It's just a fact. Now, there hasn't been a normal season since he's been here, so that might contribute to it. But at least a year, I think everybody would say he's been a bit of a disappointment. There's no other way around it. But I don't think that makes him. He's not a bad person. Everybody likes him. He's nice to everybody. The fans seem to like him. On a person-to-person basis. But I think many of them are frustrated by his lack of production on the ice.
Coming up next, we'll continue the conversation on the Predators. Got a lot of your thoughts to get to on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Also, Mark Howard gives us his all-former Predators team as well. You're not going to want to miss that. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game.
Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Mark Howard, Ryan Porter with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Make sure you stay tuned to Darren, Donick, and Chase today. They'll have a ticket opportunity for you to be in the building for Game 6 at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Thursday between the Predators and Hurricanes. And tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock here on Robby and Rexrode, we will have a similar opportunity for you to be in the building for Game 6 as well. So make sure you keep it locked all day long to ESPN 102.5 The Game and for your chance to get in the building for Game 6, what promises to be a raucous environment for Game 6 between the Predators and the Hurricanes. Mark, let's go quickly to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Paul texting in saying, are we really going to pretend like Robby's geographical location is not the difference maker in this series? Keep your butt in the sand, Robby. Gang 5 hangs in the balance.
Boy, do I have some bad news for Predators fans. I will be back in Nashville by the time the puck drops tonight in Game 5. So read into that what you will, but Mark, some Predators fans probably not going to be very happy with me.
Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? But I'll tell you what. I've done segments before, asking listeners to be honest and talk about their superstitions during a game. Is it a chair, article of clothing, a position you're sitting in, another person in the room? We get very superstitious this time of year.
I've tried to wield that in my advantage as much as I can, just hanging out on the beach. Look, if it's required for me to hang out on the beach for the Predators to win this series, so be it. I'll make that sacrifice. I'm willing to do that for everyone.
So you would make a Yui back to Florida if they lose tonight?
I am prepared to do this.
Okay, all right.
I am prepared.
That's commitment.
I'm just throwing that out there. So, Mark, you have put together an all-former Predators lineup that you want to share with us. I'm very interested to see the names that come up on this because I feel like it could be a pretty decent team to put together from some all-former Predators.
All right, now this former Predators that are still playing.
Still playing, yes.
I didn't talk about any of the players that were retired that they traded, although we could have also an all-traded-away team. And again, it's not perfect because I couldn't find 4 centers. So the first line would be, and he didn't have a great year, but I'll still put him on the first line. Alexander Radulov, Kevin Fiala, and Patrick Hornquist on the first line. Second line, James Neal, Nick Bonino in the middle, and Craig Smith on the other wing. The third
pretty good series for Craig Smith.
What's that?
Pretty good series for Craig Smith against Washington.
Yeah, good for him. Smitty's a good guy. Third line, Ryan Hartman, Kyle Turris, and Austin Watson.
Do we count Kyle Turris as someone who's a current player when
really?
he can barely crack a lineup anymore?
He went into witness protection this year, didn't he?
I'll allow it.
All right.
Just this year?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Our fourth line, Wayne Simmons, Freddie Gaudreau, and Colin, don't call me Mr. Blackwell.
Oh, I love it.
Our D pairings, pretty solid here. First pairing, Ryan Suter and Shea Weber. And you could really mix and match. Seth Jones and PK Subban.
Jeez.
And Brad Hunt and Sammy Girard.
Yeah.
Brad Hunt turned out to be pretty decent.
You're not putting Jared Tenorti, Boston Bruins great in there?
It could be Jared Tenorti. It could be Tony Botetto. It could be Rojo Irwin. So, but I went with those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And in goal, the formidable duo of Carter Hutton and Devin Dubnyk.
Oh, get fired up.
Doobie-doo was here for a few games. He had a short stop in Nashville.
A very short stop in Nashville. I believe it was 2 games as a member of the Nashville Predators.
Yeah. He couldn't stop a freaking beach ball when he was here. And then he goes to Minnesota and becomes a pretty good goaltender.
Nice reference of the Bud Ice commercial, by the way.
Yeah, that was very nice. Yeah. Porth, wasn't Dubnyk in net in the game where Nystrom scored 4 in Calgary? And they lost.
Was he really in net for that game?
I think so. I think so.
Oh, I'm going to have to look that up.
I think he was. That was a tough one. Anytime Eric Nystrom scores 4 goals, you probably ought to win that game. But I like it. Very well done by Mark Howard, the all-former Preds team that still remains active in the league. And as you pointed out, it's been tough for this franchise to find some pieces down the middle.
Oh, yeah. But there were a few centers they traded away, a few guys that walked away, but they've had a few decent pivot men in their time.
Mark, as we look ahead here to Game 5, your final thoughts on Game 5 for the Predators tonight against Carolina. What do you need to see from the Predators? What do you think is the key to a victory tonight for Nashville?
Well, don't dig a hole for yourself. Like I said, I think the first 10 minutes, Carolina is going to really bring it. And if the Preds can weather the storm, I think they can, again, they can hang close. Saros, another strong performance. And maybe they can steal one here, which would mean maybe the clincher here in Nashville Thursday night. Late Thursday night, but Thursday night nonetheless.
Very late, man. What did we do to deserve this 8:30, which is really 8:45 start time?
Well, Robbie, the playoffs test everybody's character, including the media.
That is true. My character, we're not passing that test.
And especially morning show hosts.
Exactly.
Yes, we're definitely not passing the test right now. It's going to be interesting to see tonight. I agree with Mark. I think the first 10 minutes of this game, if you're the Predators, you just got to survive, hope the flow of the game at that point, get you back to an area where you can steer control. And UC Saros, as we know, going to have to be outstanding again, and we'll see whether or not the Predators are able to get it done tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Mark, it's been fun having you in, man. I enjoyed doing my first show with you here today.
My pleasure. We've been on the radio together, but not in this format. But travel safe, buddy, and I'll see you when you get back.
Absolutely. The legendary Mark Howard with us on the program here today. Joe Rexrode traveling back from Florida. He'll be back tomorrow to break down Game 5 of the Predators and the Hurricanes in their series up in Carolina. That's going to do it for us here today here on Robby and Rexrode. Darren Donica Chase is coming up next. You're listening to ESPN 102.5 The Game.